A legend is told in the martial arts world about a master who understood the truth of the world and was close to reaching the top. The master is said to have looked for someone to finish the great task they had left behind and help guide them to the summit. A man once thought this was just a silly story, but now he believes in it. He is on the battlefield and tens of martial artists have surrounded him. He smiles and without hesitation, slices down the first person in his path and walks forward. He is none other than Baekjaein, the next leader of the Fire Dragon sect. One of the martial artists, Dan Mayon, the 12th generation master known as the Ghost Sword, is frozen in fear. He tries to shout something, but in an instant, Baekjaein cuts both his sword and his head off with one swing. Baekjaein says that he believes the story of the master because the spirit from the ancient legend has chosen him. He then readies his blade and a red aura surrounds him. He adds that they stand at the top of this world. But, well, that's what he thought would happen. Then he questions, but why has he stopped guiding him? Time passes and Baekjaein's hands are now wrinkled. He is now an old man and the leader of the Fire Dragon sect and the Blood Demon sect. Sitting on his throne, he wonders why the spirit stopped guiding him. A young man full of excitement calls out to him. He tells Baekjaein that they have finally succeeded. He holds up a potion and shows a deformed boy kneeling on the ground. The boy's face is horribly deformed and looks quite ugly. The young man explains that this boy is the first survivor of their experiment to create an immortal body. However, the boy shouts that his family is ruined and he will never forgive the man for what he's done. The young man angrily grabs the boy by the collar and yells at him. He asks the boy who gave him the right to speak and calls him an outsider. The young man then turns to Baekjaein, excitedly explaining that unlike the other test subjects, this boy can even talk. He says they injected serum into the boy, and now he can survive for weeks without food or water. Well, that's certainly one way to solve hunger, but probably not the healthiest one. Baekjaein says that's enough, explaining that he has endured for years to achieve a result, but all he has created is a twisted monster. He adds that indeed, the fools like him can never reach a true summit. Baekjaein starts walking toward the young man, who begins begging for more time. The man promises that he will complete the immortal body. However, as Baekjaein walks past him, he suddenly starts coughing. At the same time, the young man's hands tremble, and he begins to uncork the mysterious vial in his hand. He wonders what's happening to him, as his body seems to move on its own. Without warning, he starts drinking the potion. The potion spills, and the young man's body begins to mutate. He begs Baekjaein to spare him, but it's already too late. His transformation has begun. His screams fill the air as he feels his body changing. Meanwhile, the deformed boy continues staring at the broken shards of glass. The fumes from the spilled potion start swirling around him, as if they're drawn to him, ready to play their part in his twisted fate. Baekjaein, sitting weakly, clutches the wall for support, coughing up blood. He looks at the blood in his hand and wonders why the spirit isn't answering him anymore. His eyes turn to the moon as he pleads, asking the spirit to reveal the secret of immortality. He believes he needs the immortal body technique. Suddenly, the spirit calls him foolish. The spirit says that the immortal body technique is already complete. Just then, Baekjaein senses a presence behind him. He turns to find the boy leaping toward him, attempting a surprise attack. Baekjaein manages to catch the boy just in time, stopping him with his powerful aura. Looking at the boy, he couldn't believe it. He asks the spirit that instead of him, if he has chosen this boy as his vessel. Meanwhile, the boy keeps shouting, promising to curse all of them, even in hell. Baekjaein asks the Great Spirit how after everything he has done, including accomplishing the great task in his place, the spirit still dares to betray him. The spirit interrupts, asking Baekjaein what he means by saying the great task is accomplished when he hasn't even seen the truth of the world yet. The spirit calls him pitiful, but says it will let him see the truth. Suddenly, Baekjaein's vision changes, and inside his eyes, he witnesses something that cannot truly be understood in this world. It shatters through dimensions, something godlike. Baekjaein's reality seems to crack, and he is forced to confront what lies beyond. Baekjaein falls to the floor, screaming in disbelief. He wonders if this is truly the truth of the world, questioning whether his strength amounts to so little after seeing the huge gap in their power. While he's lost in thought, the blood flies through the air. The young boy is desperately stabbing at his throat again and again. The spirit speaks, asking if the boy hates the world for ruining his family. Red mist begins pouring out of the boy's head, and the spirit says it will take care of everything. The soldiers on guard look up. They find Baekjaein's corpse lying on the floor beneath a giant red cloud. They wonder what's happening. Meanwhile, the red fog continues to shoot out from the boy's head. The soldiers realize they must act quickly. They raise their weapons, determined to deal with the intruder and rush in. The spirit tells the boy that, in order to gain its help, he must crush every stronghold in this world and take their power. The boy smiles, turning toward the soldiers. The spirit urges him to let nothing and no one stand above him. A little later, the battlefield is silent. The soldiers lie dead on the ground, and the boy's face, though still scarred, has started to heal. Well, looks like he got his revenge and a little skincare treatment on the side. The spirit tells the boy that one day they will rise to the summit. The boy walks away from the massacre, ignoring the chaos around him. His body is still pierced with multiple swords, but he doesn't seem to care. He radiates a powerful mix of red and black aura, and an evil smile spreads across his face. It's like he's the walking definition of "don't mess with me." Years later, an old man tells his family that he will leave for a while and come back later. His son reminds him to take care of himself. The old man walks into the woods, moving slowly under the moonlight. He climbs some mountains and keeps walking until he reaches a hidden stronghold far away from everyone else. This place is the castle of the Fire Dragon sect. He pushes the doors open and walks inside. A group of people is waiting for him. He greets them and mentions how long it has been since they last met. One of them, called the Fist King Yukbai, agrees with the old man. However, the Northern Empress Jinwol looks surprised that they have called the old man here. Abbot Haiyun, the monk from the Shaolin Temple, does not speak but shows respect by joining his hands. Next to him is Bak Murion, the leader of the Fire Dragon sect and a descendant of Bak Jian. Bak Murion greets the old man, who is known as the Sword Emperor. He asks how the old man has been. The old man becomes serious and says he is tired of useless talk. He points out that he noticed spies following him ever since he left the martial world. He demands that they quickly explain why they have called him here. Bak Murion decides to skip the formalities and focuses on the main issue. He explains that many famous sects, including Wudang, Zhongyan, and Huashan, had all been destroyed by a single person. This master remains a mystery, as no one knows his motive or identity. Those who have encountered him describe him as a demon obsessed with fighting, and they call him the Mad Demon. Meanwhile, footsteps echo outside the castle. A young man is approaching, heading toward the same place. This young man is the deformed boy who was once chosen by the Great Spirit, but now he has grown to a much strong figure. Inside, Bak Murion continues, saying that today they will stop the Mad Demon once and for all. Suddenly, the door bursts open. The young man enters, declaring that after chasing a powerful energy, he has arrived at this familiar place. Seeing the gathering of great leaders, he concludes that they must have been waiting for this moment. The leaders begin to wonder if he might be the one they are talking about. The old man observes the boy carefully and acknowledges that the title of Mad Demon is no exaggeration. He feels the boy's overwhelming presence as though he is standing before the god of death. Deciding that this is reason enough, the old man unsheathes his sword, radiating a deadly aura. He declares that this is why he must wield his sword once more. The boy is momentarily surprised, distracted by the sudden turn of events. Taking advantage of this moment, the old man dashes forward with incredible speed, using a technique called the Sword of Celestial Grace. He instantly closes the gap between them and swings his sword toward the boy's head. Without pause, he follows up with another move, the Heavenly Sword First Strike. The attack is devastating, completely destroying the boy's body. His limbs are scattered into the air as the old man delivers the final blow. Calmly, the old man sheathes his sword and exhales deeply. Everyone else in the room stands frozen, silently witnessing the shocking scene. Yukbai urges the old man to take it easy. He finds it too boring for the fight to end so quickly and reminds everyone that he had warned them before that the talk about the Mad Demon was nonsense. However, he notices that the others have different expressions on their faces. Confused by their reactions, he looks around trying to understand what is happening. Suddenly, the boy speaks. His tone is filled with amusement. He laughs evilly. Yukbai immediately becomes alarmed and stares in disbelief. To his shock, the boy's body begins to regenerate, pulling itself back together piece by piece. Sweat forms on Yukbai's face as he nervously wonders if he is dreaming. Bak Murion wonders if the boy is using the legendary martial art known as the immortal body technique. This technique is rumored to grant its user the ability to regenerate and achieve immortality, something his family has long sought after. Once the boy's body has completely healed, he compliments the old man's attack, calling it impressive. He then announces that it is now his turn to fight. Yukbai panics and yells at the old man, urging him to get away from the boy. However, the old man remains still, and the boy calmly tells Yukbai that he should not worry about the old man, as he has already had his fun with him. The old man collapses, coughing up large amounts of blood. His entire front side is deeply cut, and he kneels from the pain before falling into a pool of his own blood. The boy then begins walking forward, asking who will face him next. Bak Murion is seething with anger, but Jinwol urges him to remain calm, and asks if he knows anything about this situation as the leader of the Fire Dragon sect. Bakmurion mentions that he has read about this ability in ancient books, but he is not entirely sure of its origins. Meanwhile, Yupbai stares at the unconscious old man, struggling to process what has just happened. A mix of rage and fear takes over him. Bakmurion notices that Yupbai is losing his temper, but before he can stop him, Yupbai shatters the floor beneath him with sheer force and dashes forward. Bakmurion tries to call him back, but is too late. Yupbai charges directly at the boy, determined to avenge the old man. The boy immediately recognizes Yupbai as the Fist King and braces for the attack. Yupbai unleashes a powerful technique called Explosive Fist Gale, striking the boy directly in the face. The sheer force of the attack begins to disintegrate the boy's skin. Even being on the receiving end, the boy expresses admiration, acknowledging that the power of the Fist King is worthy of his title. The magnitude of attack is so great that it leads to a massive explosion, followed by a beam of energy that breaks the sound barrier several times even outside the Fire Dragon Sect temple. Bakmurion watches and comments on the incredible power of Yupbai's martial art, but believes it is not enough to defeat the boy. Meanwhile, the boy has already regenerated. Yupbai is stunned and wonders how the boy is still alive after taking such a powerful hit. What Yupbai does not realize is that the boy has actually blocked his fist. With each passing second, the boy is getting stronger. The boy acknowledges that Yupbai's martial art is magnificent. He taps Yupbai's chest lightly and promises to make sure to receive it properly. Yupbai realizes too late what is happening as the boy turns his own attack back on him. The explosive fist gale hits Yupbai and he stumbles in shock. He can hardly believe he has been struck by his own technique. Abbot Haiyan suddenly steps forward, using his arms to block the attack and absorb the blow. He cries tears of blood from the effort. The boy calls out to Abbot Haiyan, telling him that it is not his turn to fight yet. Abbot Haiyan retorts, calling the boy a fool and telling him to stop being so arrogant. The boy laughs, noticing that despite his words, Abbot Haiyan is struggling to stay standing, clearly exhausted from taking the hit. Yupbai, feeling guilty, apologizes to Abbot Haiyan, but Abbot Haiyan refuses to accept it. He insists that if he had not stepped in, Yupbai would have been the one to fall. The monk tells them that they need to focus on dealing with the boy before worrying about such small matters. The boy, amused by Abbot Haiyan's strength, asks if his body is strong enough to withstand the Fist King's martial art, claiming it must be indestructible. He then leaps forward, eager to consume Abbot Haiyan's martial art. However, before he can move further, Jinwol intervenes. She tells him to stop messing around, and with a swift motion, she imbues her sword with ice and strikes the boy in the back. The boy freezes instantly, his hands just barely missing Abbot Haiyan's face. The boy realizes that this must be the martial art of the Northern Sea Ice Palace, something he has only heard about. Jinwol tells him to stay quiet. The boy laughs, admitting that it is incredibly cold, freezing even his bones. He then acknowledges that the 5 masters of the martial world truly live up to their names, as each of them possesses martial arts that have reached the highest levels. He expresses admiration for their power. Bakmurion steps forward, pleased that the boy appreciates their martial arts. He tells him that he will now witness the power of the Fire Dragon Sect. Just then, the wind begins to swirl around him. Bakmurion swings his sword forward, slicing through the boy. The boy looks down, confused as he sees no real damage. He wonders if that was really all there was to it, feeling that the attack was ineffective. Bakmurion, however, informs him that he will now be trapped in darkness forever. Before the boy can react, multiple talismans appear, wrapping around him tightly. He realizes that his body is being confined. Panicking, he starts to scream, demanding to know what is happening and what they have done to him. The talismans continue to wrap around him, tightening like a mummy. His strength fades, the boy struggles, feeling his energy drain. His cries grow louder, but the talismans hold firm. Jinwol watches him with a mixture of fear and uncertainty, but her expression changes to one of relief as the boy is completely mummified, his body now immobilized and powerless. Abbot Haiyan looks confused and asks what kind of martial art this is, as he has never heard of it before. Bakmurion explains that it is the Eclipsing Blade, a powerful treasure passed down to the leaders of the Fire Dragon Sect. Anyone struck by this sword is said to be trapped in darkness for eternity. However, since there are no records of it ever being used, no one knows how long the effect lasts, so they must always be prepared. An eternity later, the boy is now trapped behind a glass wall. It has been 3,000 years, and he is being transported as cargo on a sci-fi spaceship. The year is 2600, and the boy finds himself on planet GSP, specifically in Zone 3. A man named Mark from the Earth Promotion Team introduces himself to the crew. He tells them to be careful with the exhibits, as they are fragile. One of the men asks if Mark is the only one from the advanced team, and Mark responds that there is another person with him. He points her out, revealing that she is also part of their team. Looking at her, Mark wonders where she is going alone. The lady walks toward a giant gate. She removes her glasses and comments that she has finally arrived on this planet. She is introduced as Lena, the team leader. Mark tries to call out to her while waving, but Lena asks if he is here just for fun. Mark explains that until the main team arrives, there isn't much to do, so this feels like a vacation. Lena sighs, calling him bold for thinking so. Mark remarks that he didn't expect Lena to volunteer for the GSP team. She asks what he means by that, and he explains that it's surprising for someone like her, who usually avoids aliens, to suddenly choose to go to a place where aliens from all over the universe gather. As they walk through a crowd of aliens, Mark points out that there are species here that can't even be found on Earth. Lena tells him to stop fooling around, mentioning that it is still dangerous. Mark insists that things are much different now, and during the tournament, everyone is on equal footing. Lena looks up at some of the aliens around them and wonders if they feel the same way. She begins to think about how complacent they might be when she suddenly notices that Mark has already bought a bunch of items from street vendors. She turns around, clearly disappointed, and tells him he should just stay in the exhibition hall. Mark asks why, and Lena questions that he really wants to be around so many creepy aliens. Mark responds that comments like hers can be dangerous even if everyone is on equal footing. Lena tells him that the danger comes from the fact that they are not truly equal. She sighs, shaking her head, and tells him that he wouldn't understand since he is still a newbie. Mark disagrees, saying it's not about whether they are aliens or not. He explains that calling anyone disgusting will make anyone angry, no matter who they are. Before he can say more, Lena interrupts him. She tells him that they have now arrived at a place where they can truly rise to an equal position with the other beings around them. It is the GSP tournament arena, where a man begins to shout loudly, welcoming everyone from across the universe. He announces that this is the greatest cosmic festival, held once every 100 years. It is a place of opportunity where civilizations can instantly raise their level of advancement. He welcomes all the participants to the GSP fighting tournament. Mark turns to Lena and asks if she actually came here to watch the tournament, or if she only said that she came to visit. Lena explains that her real reason for coming is to find the weaknesses of their enemies. Mark is confused, not understanding what she means. Meanwhile, the commentator announces the two participants of the match that is about to begin. One of them, named Agmi, comes from the Ifrit civilization. He is ranked 972 in the civilization rankings. His opponent is a man named Panan, from the Piglo civilization, ranked 9,630. The announcer's voice rings out, trying to excite the crowd as he announces the beginning of the preliminaries for Group 6. Back at the GSP Zone 3 Z District Planet Promotional Hall, one of the workers walks past the mummified mad demon. He suddenly hears a strange sound and stops, looking around confused. His boss, who is nearby, tells him to hurry up and finish his work. The worker asks if his boss didn't hear the noise. The boss dismisses him, saying the only sound he hears is him acting foolish. Meanwhile, the mummified mad demon's eye cracks open. Slowly, the eye begins to move, watching everything around him. Meanwhile, an in-depth explanation is given about planet GSP. It is located 500,000 light-years from Earth. The planet holds a combat tournament once every 100 years, featuring civilizations from all over the universe. The civilization that wins the tournament is said to achieve the truth of things and be liberated from all negative effects like disease, hunger, and war. The Unified Earth Government, GU, has officially qualified to participate in this tournament, and their contestant, known as the strongest on Earth, is expected to easily reach the finals and possibly win the championship. Back in the tournament arena, the announcer praises the Ifrit civilization, saying indeed they live up to the name of the living flame species, because as soon as Agni's restraints were released, the entire arena was engulfed in intense flames. Mark and Lena, watching from the sidelines, see Panan struggling to keep up. The flames are overwhelming, proving Agni's power. Agni charges forward, determined to burn Panan to a crisp. The battle is on, and Agni has gotten much larger and more powerful than before. The crowd chants in excitement, and one spectator comments that they have bet everything on Agni to win. The announcer praises the excitement of the crowd, comparing it to the intensity of Agni's flames. Agni is clearly very popular, and his power has drawn attention from everyone. Panan, hearing the chants from the crowd, looks to his side. Agni, furious, demands that Panan focus on him instead of looking away. Panan, surprised, turns back, not expecting the gap between them to close so quickly, but it might already be too late. Agni releases a breath of fire, hitting Panan directly. The announcer explains that Agni's fiery breath is known to melt even the toughest ships. Panan struggles to endure the attack. Mark looks grossed out, and Lena stands silently, lost in thought. Agnai laughs, proudly showing off his power, mocking his opponent. Mark, confused and frustrated, wonders how they're supposed to fight such a monster. Lena thinks deeply about the situation before replying. She acknowledges that searching for a weakness might not change much. But it's not just about that. She has noticed something important. None of the aliens from Tier 3 or higher seem to be focused on this match. Lena realizes that since the tournament could change the fate of entire civilizations, she thought the reactions would be different. It seems, however, that a Tier 1 civilization like theirs is insignificant in the eyes of the other participants. This arrogance, Lena thinks, will become their weapon in the fight. She asks Marx if he now understands why they need to keep searching for weaknesses and come up with a solid plan. Mark clarifies that he didn't mean that. He's just confused why, as the promotion team, they have to be right there with the fighters. Meanwhile, a little girl in the crowd screams, urging Panon not to lose. Mark notices that no one other than this girl is cheering for Panon. He realizes the girl is another member of the Piglo species. Panicked, the girl started to cry. Mark feels sorry for her, knowing that their civilization had bad luck in the matchups. Panon's opponent, Agni, is one of the top-ranked fighters from a Tier 3 civilization, and that makes it nearly impossible for Panon to win. The aftermath of the attack is clear. Panon has vanished, and it's obvious he's been overwhelmed. Then, a little bald kid nearby mocks the fight, telling the announcer to call it over. He says Panon is probably reduced to ash by now. Mark feels a wave of unease. He knows things can escalate quickly in such an environment, and it's best to avoid getting involved. He urges Lena to move away with him. Meanwhile, the little girl from the Piglo species steps forward, confronting the bald kid. She angrily tells him not to talk about Panon when he has no understanding of who he is. The bald kid, annoyed, drinks from his bottle and insults the girl, saying this little one has no manners at all, as expected of a lowly species. The girl retaliates, calling him a brat. She taunts that he is a little one too. Mark, realizing that tensions are rising, quickly suggests to Lena that they leave before they get caught up in something dangerous. The situation between the two children intensifies. Mark feels that something bad could happen at any moment. The bald kid's head veins bulge violently as he challenges the little girl, his anger building. His body begins to swell, and he announces that he is considered quite normal on his planet. The girl's face turns to horror as she realizes the extent of his transformation. Mark senses the escalating danger and urgently warns Lena that they need to leave. Looking at the baldy transforming into a monster gets on his nerves. Meanwhile, the bald kid taunts the little girl, saying that even someone like him could easily turn their planet's representative into a bloody mess in seconds. The baldy is a representative from the pixie cult civilization, ranked 1,300, and his name is Mr. Picky. Surprisingly, he is an engineer. Lena, unfazed, questions whether it's really impressive to boast about strength in front of a child. Mr. Picky directs his attention toward her, irritated by her comments. Lena dismisses him, saying his boasting is just a cover for his insecurities, calling him a loser. Mr. Picky, his irritation boiling over, snaps at Lena and Mark, loudly accusing them of taking some sort of drug together to make them act the way they are. He demands to know why they are all making him so angry. Mark, feeling the tension rise, nervously asks if he's included in the insults. Meanwhile, Lena, unfazed by the baldy's outburst, continues her taunting. She challenges him, asking what he can even do now that he's this angry, and calls him a loser once again, pushing his buttons further. Mr. Picky steps forward, vowing to make Lena regret her words. Mark, sensing the rising danger, warns Lena to back off. He tries to reason with Mr. Picky, explaining that he has completely misunderstood the situation. Lena, however, refuses to retreat and teases Mark, asking if he's planning to abandon his team leader. But before they can react, Mr. Picky closes the distance quickly, preparing to strike. Mark's life flashes before his eyes, and he urgently tells Mr. Picky to stop. Just as his fist is about to land, a drone appears behind him. The bald kid hesitates, sweating nervously, wondering why the drone had to interrupt him. Lena calmly explains that the drone is part of the stadium's security system, and with so many drones patrolling, none of them can get away with anything inside the arena. The drone asks if Mr. Picky has harmed them in any way, and Lena laughs. She tells the drone that he hasn't directly harmed anyone, but that idiot suddenly started showing off his muscles. Maybe he is drunk. She adds that because of that she has suffered so much that she has lost her appetite, but it is all right. The drone turns to Mr. Picky, asking if Lena's words are true. Lena takes the opportunity to mock him openly, commenting that is not that right. He was merely showing off his rugged physique to a Tier 1 civilization like theirs. She sarcastically suggests he try the same stunt with the drone. Enraged, Mr. Picky grits his teeth, furious at being humiliated. Mark, now visibly anxious, asks Lena why she is taunting him so aggressively, knowing how close Mr. Picky is to exploding. Lena, still calm, explains that before that guy actually harms anyone, speaking the truth will conclude this with him being released without any real consequences. This, she believes, is her way of punishing him, by forcing him to face the embarrassment of his own behavior. Marks tells Lena to just let him go and stop provoking him. Enraged and embarrassed, Mr. Picky notices the name tag on Mark's chest, seeing where he's from. The drone, still observing the situation, sarcastically asks if Mr. Picky really just wanted to show off his muscles. Mr. Picky grins, acknowledging that he did indeed just want to show off a little, and immediately shrinks back down to his smaller form. He raises his hands in the air and claims that this means he hasn't done anything wrong. Mr. Picky waves them off, dismissing them as pests as he prepares to leave. Before walking away, he assures them that they'll meet again later. Mark, visibly relieved that the confrontation is over, mutters to himself that he hopes he never sees that freak again. He turns to Lena, asking if she had expected this kind of behavior. Lena casually replies that of course she did, questioning if Mark thought she was crazy enough to mess around with such a monster without a plan. She admits that her phobia of aliens flared up again when dealing with Mr. Picky. As they talk, the little girl from earlier tugs on Lena's sleeve, thanking her for helping. Lena's expression hardens, clearly irritated, and she brushes the child off, telling her to get lost as she's distracting her. Mark watches, shaking his head, thinking that Lena must have just suddenly lost her temper. He pats the little kid's head and suggests she go back to her family. The girl pushes his hand away, calling him a coward and telling him not to touch her. She bows to Lena again before leaving, and Mark can't help but wonder why she acts so mean towards him. Lena repeats the girl's insult, telling Mark to shut up and calling him a coward as well. Meanwhile, the crowd of aliens continues getting louder. They keep shouting at Panan, asking him to show himself. They want the fight to continue. The announcer, feeling the energy from the crowd, says the fight isn't over yet. Agme laughs, enjoying the game of hide and seek. He has been waiting for this moment, and now he's ready for more. Lena feels discouraged. She watches Agme and thinks about how much stronger he is compared to them. He comes from a Tier 3 civilization, and Earth is far behind. She wonders if there's any way for humans to stand a chance against such a powerful opponent. As Lena is lost in thought, memories from her childhood flood her mind. She remembers seeing people suffering from a terrible disease. She was just a little girl at the time, and she had to wear a hazmat suit to protect herself. She cried as she saw the pain around her. Quickly, she shakes off these memories, reminding herself not to be weak anymore. She must stay strong. Mark notices that Lena is shaking and asks if she's okay. He sees that she is trembling and looks worried, but Lena tells him it's nothing and she doesn't want him to worry about her. She tries to stay calm, but inside she feels the weight of the situation. The announcer suddenly shouts that the fight is still going on. Panan, who had been hiding, finally appears. He jumps out of the flames, taking Agme by surprise. Half of Panan's face is badly burned, but he doesn't hesitate. With all of his strength, he attacks Agme from behind and in a single strike, knocks him down to the ground. Lena watches in shock. She is not sure if Panan's attack worked, but the announcer soon confirms that Agme is not getting up. He is down and the fight is taking a turn. Lena is unsure of what to think, while Mark, distracted by his phone, doesn't seem as concerned. Mark calls Lena over, but she seems focused on the fight. He tells her that something is wrong with the exhibit they brought and that she needs to check it out right away. Lena, still anxious, agrees to go with him. She had already told him to double-check everything, but now she knows something must have gone wrong. She feels uneasy as they head back to check on the problem. Mark says it's strange though, as he is pretty sure he had checked them. Lena says she knew something would go wrong the moment he started talking about vacation and seemed excited. Meanwhile, Mr. Picky is hiding behind a corner and watching them closely. Mark says this is really strange, there shouldn't have been any issues, but Lena doesn't seem worried. She says she's already seen everything she wanted to see. She asks Mark if he has seen it too, as she can hardly believe what she just witnessed. Panan, against all odds, managed to win against Agme, the powerful opponent from the Tier 3 civilization. She knows it's a rare victory, but it also makes her realize that not all opponents are unbeatable. However, just as Lena is thinking and talking, the situation takes a sudden turn. Mark is suddenly knocked out by one of the pixie. The blow hits him so fast that Lena barely has time to react. When she turns around, she feels a rush of wind, and before she can do anything, Mr. Picky grabs her by the back of her head. She hears a loud thud, and everything goes black. Lena slowly begins to wake up. Her head is pounding with a terrible headache. As her vision clears, she sees Mark, unconscious and being dragged away by a pixie. At first, she doesn't understand what happened. Everything occurred too quickly for her to process. She feels a surge of panic and shouts for Mark to wake up, hoping he's okay. Mr. Picky, who is still holding her by her hair, laughs, sounding pleased that she's finally awake. His friend asks if she's talking about him as he dangles Mark in the air like a rag doll. Mr. Picky assures her that Mark is still alive and hasn't been killed, but that doesn't comfort Lena at all. Lena, desperate and angry, demands that Mr. Picky let her go. She asks if he's really this upset over a little teasing. But Mr. Picky just smirks. She asks him if he doesn't understand, reminding him that they are on the GSP planet and the security team will be deployed soon. Mr. Picky mocks her, saying that she, a lowly member of a Tier 1 civilization, has no right to talk to them like that. He explains that most of the security devices on the planet are based on their own civilization's technology. He's already dealt with the security systems in this building, meaning they are free to do whatever they want for now. Mr. Picky, clearly enjoying the moment, begins poking Lena's forehead, mocking her. He smirks, saying that now she finally understands, and goes on to tell her that the Galactic Federation isn't what it used to be. He insists that they shouldn't accept weak, incompetent fools like her or her civilization anymore. Lena, furious and feeling a surge of anger, snaps back at him. She asks him what he means by accepting, her voice shaking with emotion. She yells at him to shut up, making it clear that Earth never wanted to join the Federation in the first place. She says that they were forced into it when the Federation barged onto their planet like some kind of god and made a contract with Earth's president. She explains that because of the Federation's interference, Earth has suffered greatly. An infectious disease brought by the Federation has spread across the planet. Billions of people are dying in agony as their bodies slowly destroy themselves from the inside out. She accuses the Federation of doing nothing to help, even though they claim to protect the balance between civilizations. Despite their promises, they have shown no real support for Earth, leaving the planet to suffer. Mr. Picky and his friend remain silent for a moment, caught off guard by Lena's words. Then they both burst into laughter, mocking her. They make fun of her, calling her naive and asking if she really understands what she's saying. He tells her that by admitting how bad things are for Earth, she's basically admitting that her entire civilization is doomed. He mocks her further, suggesting that Lena must think the Galactic Federation is some kind of charity that will come to Earth's rescue. Mr. Picky continues to ridicule her, wondering aloud if there's really a primitive civilization still struggling with diseases and infections. He says he thought species like hers were only found in museums by now. Mr. Picky and his friend drag Lena and Mark into the exhibit room. There, noticing something amiss, Mr. Picky's friend looks around, asking who else is in the room. A voice suddenly responds, wondering which sect dared to bring them there. It is none other than the Mad Demon. He guesses that the Shaolin Temple is responsible and comments that they think their interior has changed drastically. He remarks that it looks so extravagant now that it almost seems like a private room. Lena immediately recognizes his language. Her eyes widen as she realizes the speaker is an Earthling. The friend of Mr. Picky starts walking toward the Mad Demon, telling him to use the common language. However, Lena soon realizes they can't understand each other. The Mad Demon, confused by the request, asks what they mean. He reflects that it's not just the interior decoration that has changed. Lena, understanding the situation, realizes that this person from Earth cannot speak the common language. She thinks that it might be better this way since they won't be able to communicate easily. However, desperate, she yells at the Mad Demon to go and report to the security team. She warns him that Mr. Picky and his friend are trying to break the Federation's rules, but before she can finish, Mr. Picky slams her head into the floor, demanding if she wants to die already. The Mad Demon begins to laugh, clearly amused by the situation. He states that he understands now, knowing that not everyone has changed. With a swift motion, he stretches out his hand and touches Mr. Picky's friend. The friend is confused, unsure of what is happening. Before he can react, the Mad Demon follows up with a sudden and powerful move, the Vortex Wind Fist. The attack leaves that Pixie completely destroyed, his body torn apart. The force of the attack is so powerful that even though Mr. Picky is standing just behind his friend, he is also completely devastated. Lena is shocked and unable to believe what she has just seen. She can hardly understand what happened. The Mad Demon laughs wildly, telling her not to get so flustered. He asks her if she understands his words clearly. Lena, still confused, nods in response. The Mad Demon tells her that he has many questions. He warns her that if she tries to run away without a reason, he will kill her instantly. Lena, still trying to grasp the situation, asks if he has a lot of questions for her. The Mad Demon looks at her, puzzled. He wonders if her mind is empty. She continues to ask how he was able to do what he just did, but he taps his forehead and says that if she values her life, she should speak clearly. Lena recalls that he doesn't speak the common language. The Mad Demon orders her to first explain where they are. Lena answers that they are in a promotional building in Street C. The Mad Demon looks confused and asks if this is really not the Shaolin Temple. Lena glances down and answers that it's definitely not. The Mad Demon, still unsure, reflects that the energy here sure feels different from the Shaolin Temple. He comments that the atmosphere is far too noisy for a place like the Shaolin Temple. Lena looks up at the mad demon, trying to figure out what he is. She wonders about his identity, but the mad demon is still struggling to understand his surroundings. Lena thinks that based on the language he speaks and his appearance, he must be human. She doesn't see any special devices on him, so she asks what caused that explosion earlier. The mad demon angrily asks if she's crazy, accusing her of constantly touching his body. Lena quickly brushes his hand away and insists that she's only asking about his identity. She demands that he tell her who he is and what his affiliation is. The mad demon is surprised by her question and asks why she doesn't already know who he is. Lena replies that she has no idea who he is and asks how she's supposed to know. She then jokingly asks if he's some kind of celebrity, but before he can answer, something catches her attention. Lena suddenly yells at him to turn around. She spots someone, Mr. Picky, who is alive and looking extremely angry. He is furious, asking how a creature from a low race has done this. The mad demon looks at the pixie, clearly amused that the big creature is able to stand up again. Just then, the pixie rushes in, throwing a punch straight at the mad demon. The mad demon raises his hand and effortlessly deflects the attack, surprising the pixie. He mocks them, saying they're all just brutes who don't know how to use their bodies properly. He then hits the pixie hard in the gut. The mad demon looks at the pixie and asks if they aren't training their internal energy. Then, with a sudden burst of power, he blasts the pixie with overwhelming force, sending him flying through the air. The pixie struggles to stay conscious, clearly overwhelmed by the attack. Lena, still trying to understand what just happened, asks how the mad demon managed to block the pixie's punch with just one hand. The mad demon repeats his question, asking her once more if she really doesn't know who he is. Lena, still confused, wonders if perhaps he is famous on Earth. With his strength, she thinks it would be strange for people not to know about him. She apologizes, explaining that she doesn't know much about Earth because she spends most of her time on other planets. The mad demon, not understanding, asks her to explain what she means by Earth and other planets. He demands that she clarify her words. Lena answers simply, saying she doesn't have much time to spend on Earth because of her work. Just then, Mark, who had been unconscious, finally wakes up and calls out to Lena, asking what's going on. The mad demon, annoyed, asks where these weaklings keep coming from. Mark, not impressed by the mad demon, asks Lena who he is. Lena, equally confused, replies that she doesn't know who the mad demon is either. Mark then asks if the mad demon is supposed to be someone famous. Lena says it doesn't seem like it, and Mark asks her to explain what happened. Lena, still trying to make sense of things, thanks the mad demon for saving her, but says it's going to be difficult to cooperate with him unless he reveals his identity. The mad demon laughs in response, mocking her for daring to threaten him. However, he decides to introduce himself properly. He announces that he is the great demon Jinwol, the one who destroyed 4 great sects. Both Lena and Mark stare at the mad demon, confused. They wonder why he's acting so strange, especially after hearing his name. Mark can't help but think that this guy sounds childish with his choice of name. He tells Lena that he doesn't think this person is in his right mind. Lena admits that she doesn't really understand the meaning behind his name, but it does sound important. She thinks this might be a good opportunity to learn more. Mark, however, can't believe that Lena is buying into this. Meanwhile, the pixie, still struggling to recover from the earlier attack, finally crawls his way back. He slams his hand into the ground in frustration, cursing as he wonders how he could have lost to someone from this low race. Seeing the pixie getting up, Mark goes on high alert. He wonders if these pixies are here because of what happened earlier. The pixie grits his teeth in anger and mutters that if only he wasn't wearing the stupid suppressor, things might be different. Mark, noticing the pixie's anger, tells Lena that it looks like the pixie might explode any second. Lena, still focused on Jinwol, asks if he really thinks he can defeat the pixie in his current state. Mark looks at her, puzzled, and asks what she's talking about. He says they need to run away before things get worse. Surprised, Jinwol says it means that Baldy wasn't using his full power just now. Lena agrees, saying that the pixie didn't even use half of his strength. This makes Jinwol even more intrigued, and he starts walking toward the pixie, eager to find out if the pixie was really going easy on him during their fight. Lena, concerned, tries to stop him. She tells Mark that they should get more information from that guy. Mark, growing more agitated, yells at Lena, warning her that she must know better than anyone the consequences of letting her guard down. He insists that they should leave, but Lena refuses, insisting that she wants to watch the fight. Despite her protests, Mark turns to leave, shaking his head and calling her crazy. He's clearly frustrated and doesn't care about what happens anymore. Lena, standing there nervously biting her lip, admits to herself that Mark might be right. But she also recognizes that there's something unique about Jinwol. He has already shown her the potential of a Tier 1 civilization human from Earth, even in the presence of such an unreasonable monster. Since he's from Earth, she believes that their civilization might still have a chance, even with a big gap in technology and power. Meanwhile, the pixie begins to grow in size once again. Lena's heart races as she sees the suppressor break, and the pixie's power starts to surge. The pixie, now much larger, yells out in fury, announcing that he's done with the restrictions and will kill Jinwol with his own hands. Lena starts to sweat, recognizing the pixie for what he truly is, a member of a cosmos species capable of freely manipulating metal. Without the suppressor, he's far more dangerous, and this fight is no longer something to be taken lightly. His power surges and the electricity crackles around that pixie, and a blue aura surrounds him. He's clearly ready to unleash everything he has, but Jinwol, instead of backing down, looks excited, clearly intrigued by what's happening. He thinks to himself that this battle might be more interesting than he initially expected. The pixie clenches his fist and metal begins to fly toward Jinwol at incredible speed. The pixie says that Jinwol needs to experience the huge difference between their civilizations and then die. The metal moves like a swarm and falls on Jinwol, who gets buried under the piles of metal, all bloodied. However, an evil smile spreads on Jinwol's face. He is feeling a rush of excitement and seems unfazed by the attack. Then suddenly, with a burst of energy, he explodes the debris around him. The pixie, stunned, can't believe his eyes as Jinwol emerges from the explosion, completely healed and unharmed. Jinwol calls out to the pixie and declares that he wants the pixie's power all for himself. The pixie, still in shock, tries to process what just happened. He realizes that Jinwol broke through his attack with nothing but pure force, which means the mad demon is stronger than he thought, even without his suppressor. The pixie starts to sweat nervously, feeling the pressure, but he refuses to back down. He inhales deeply, preparing himself for another attack, telling himself that Jinwol's strength can't be true. There's no way the human is stronger than him. Determined, the pixie launches another wave of metal at Jinwol, this time compressing it even further. The air grows tense as the metal hurtles toward Jinwol. For a brief moment, everything goes silent. Then the pixie laughs, thinking that this time it's over. He's convinced that he's finally won, and it should have been this way from the beginning. Jinwol suddenly appears on his shoulders. He asks, mocking the pixie, how a trash like him could possibly think he's above him. He questions what the pixie has been babbling about since earlier. Pixie tries to grab Jinwol, but in an instant Jinwol leaps backward through the air, creating distance between them. Mr. Picky begins using the metal around him again. He curses Jinwol, wondering what kind of tricks this petty human is using. Just as the metal flies toward him, a grin spreads across Jinwol's face. He has figured out how the pixie is controlling the metal, and in an instant, he raises his own hand. The metal chunks start rising into the air, just like how Pixie had done it. He asks the pixie, mockingly, if this is how it's done. A yellow stripe appears down Jinwol's face and electricity crackles around his fist, charging with energy. The pixie, now realizing what's happening, breaks out in a cold sweat. He sees that Jinwol is using his very own technique against him, something he didn't expect at all. In frustration, the pixie launches another attack and an explosion erupts where Jinwol had been standing. The shockwave shakes the area. Lena, still watching from the sidelines, is completely stunned by what she's just witnessed. She can hardly believe her eyes. The pixie, still shocked and confused, asks how this trash is able to use his own civilization's cosmos force. Jinwol steps out from the wreckage, completely untouched, and responds with a smirk. He's pleased that the pixie finally understands what he's doing. He mentions that he understands that it is called the cosmos force and says that he's going to enjoy using it. And as a form of gratitude, he promises to show the pixie his own technique. The pixie, now furious, starts to prepare a much bigger attack. He questions how Jinwol dares to imitate him. But Jinwol, not even fazed, responds that this is more than just an imitation. He has robbed him. Without wasting any time, he dashes forward. Before the pixie can even finish his monologue, Jinwol lands a devastating blow to his gut, knocking the wind out of him. The force of the punch is so powerful that the pixie's eyes water and his back bulges painfully from the impact. Jinwol laughs, revealing that the technique he just used is called the fierce tiger palm. Lena stands there still in disbelief. She can hardly believe what just happened. Jinwol has defeated a being from a Tier 3 civilization using cosmos force. It seems almost impossible, and she mutters to herself that it's unbelievable. Jinwol, however, doesn't seem bothered by the enormity of his victory. He walks toward her with a relaxed expression, commenting that this martial art is quite interesting and that it's exhilarating to use. He then calls out to Lena, asking her to lead him to where the bald monks are. Lena, now more determined than ever, grabs onto his hand, her eyes filled with hope. She realizes that Jinwol must have come here for a reason, to prove his strength. She tells him that it makes sense now, that he must have sneaked onto this planet with the goal of testing himself against stronger opponents. Jinwol, confused by her sudden enthusiasm, asks what she means. But Lena, now brimming with hope, explains that she will take him to a place where much stronger people are, and she believes he should become Earth's representative in the GSP tournament. Lena's words are filled with excitement as she envisions the possibilities of Jinwol's strength in the competition. She believes that if he becomes Earth's representative in the GSP tournament, Earth might actually stand a chance. Meanwhile, Mark, standing off to the side, looks at the wreckage from the battle, still trying to process everything he's seen. He can't believe what just happened. The entire situation seems too unreal, but after seeing the destruction, he begins to piece it together. He knows now that the crazy person must be the one behind all of this. Alongside him is a big transformer-like man named Virtus, a judge from planet GSP. He comments that the situation seems to have changed a lot from what he had heard. Looking at the chaos around them, Virtus asks if the pixie resident had gotten out of control and started putting people in danger. Mark suddenly realizes he may have made a big mistake by bringing Virtus here. Virtus, examining the situation, concludes that a third party must have intervened. He speculates that if even a Tier 3 civilization like the Pixies had been defeated, it means the attacker must come from a higher civilization or one that specializes in combat. Mark, still confused, says that logically it's hard to believe that a human could have done all this. He thinks that this might work in his favor, giving him enough time to contact Lena. Virtus notices Mark's unease and asks what he's so worried about. Mark tries to downplay it, but Virtus is quick to read his face, recognizing the worry. Mark laughs nervously, admitting that he's just concerned about the other human he was with. Virtus tells him that they won't be safe, adding that based on the scene, the suspect appears to be a heinous criminal. Mark reluctantly agrees with the assessment. Virtus gestures to the crime scene and tells Mark not to worry too much. The best investigators on planet GSP are already on the case, and soon they will figure out who caused all of this. Mark watches as drones begin reconstructing the scene, using a technology known as the memory specter. It recreates past events, allowing them to visualize exactly what happened. Suddenly, rubble begins to fall from above them. Mark mutters to himself, realizing that staying here was going to cause problems. Virtus, sensing his concern, tells him not to be discouraged. With a determined look, Virtus clenches his fist, and it starts to glow with a yellow aura. He releases a powerful beam of light that shatters the falling rubble and the ceiling above them. The beam shoots straight into the sky. Mark, surprised by the immense power of the attack, watches in awe. Virtus, with a calm but determined expression, declares that as the judge of justice, he will surely take revenge for his kin. Mark stands there, completely terrified, realizing that things have taken a very bad turn. He starts to understand Lena's fear of aliens more than ever. A flashback takes us 30 minutes earlier, where Jinwol, having just come to his senses, starts observing the strange place. He tells Lena his story. Lena ponders on his story. She feels like everything that he has narrated to her now is something straight out of a novel. She thinks to herself that this explains how Jinwol was able to speak a language he couldn't before. She wonders if that was due to influence of absorbing that pixie's power. She's never heard of a cosmos power that can absorb the power of others, but if that's not the case, nothing else makes sense. She wonders why humanity lost these abilities in the first place, suspecting that it could be similar to lost technology. However, just then, Jinwol begins to walk away. Lena is confused and asks where he's going. He responds, saying that after thinking about it, he doesn't need her help anymore. She yells at him to wait, reminding him that she promised to take him to where he needed to go. But he just keeps walking, saying he can find it on his own. Lena starts running after him, shouting for him to wait. She tells him that this isn't the world he remembers. Jinwol, still walking, responds that he knows this isn't the same world, but he's curious about how things work now, like how the doors open automatically. When he steps outside, he's shocked. Instead of the familiar sights he's used to, he sees aliens walking around the streets. He wonders, completely stunned, what they are. Lena, breathing heavily, puts her hand on Jinwol's shoulder, telling him that she had warned him about this. She then introduces him to the 26th century, explaining that this is now an era of space exploration, something that wasn't even a concept in his time. Jinwol looks at her, confused, and asks what she means by the space exploration era. Lena responds, saying that it means humanity has begun to interact with civilizations beyond Earth, which is why it's called that. He asks her what's so special about interacting with these strange creatures. Why would it even be considered a new era? Lena asks him why he thinks these creatures are so strange. She then challenges him, asking where he would place humans if he were to rank all these creatures and civilizations based on their tier, where would humans truly stand? Sometime later, Jinwol is now wearing a shirt. He responds that he has no idea how many of these creatures there are, so how could he possibly know something like that? Lena tells him that there are about 20,000 civilizations in the universe and humanity is at the very bottom of the food chain. Jinwol asks if that means the bald guy from earlier, the pixie, is included. He then adds jokingly that maybe humans are just really stupid. Lena admits that, sadly, he's right. She explains that in the universe, there's a 5-tier scale that categorizes civilizations based on their hierarchy. And as she already told him, humans are at the lowest tier, classified as a Tier 1 civilization. However, even among Tier 1s, humans are at the very bottom. Jinwol laughs, mocking Lena for caring so much about the rankings, calling them useless. He tells her that if he were in her place, he would focus on gaining strength rather than worrying about such things. Lena calls out to him, saying she is formally proposing this once again. Jinwol asks her what she means, wondering why she's bringing this up all of a sudden. She explains that deep down, Jinwol just wants to meet and fight strong beings. He admits that's true. Lena then tells him that on this planet GSP, a tournament is held every 100 years. In this tournament, powerful beings participate, beings far stronger than anything he could imagine. If he represents Earth in this tournament, she says, he'll be able to meet the strong beings he desires. Jinwol slaps her hand off of him, annoyed, asking if she's telling him to fight for her. Lena confirms that it's true, but she insists that it's the only way he can meet those strong beings. Jinwol gets frustrated, telling her to shut up. He asks if she really thinks she can use him, just because they exchange a few words. He questions if she thinks he's foolish just because he comes from a different time. Lena, holding back her anger, apologizes if it sounded that way. She says she'll change her words and present it as a request. She adds that if they do well in the tournament, humanity could advance to the next tier of civilizations. Jinwol asks why these empty rankings are so important to her. She becomes annoyed and insists they are not empty. He asks what she means, and she explains that it's about moving up a few tiers in civilization. Jinwol, unconvinced, asks if moving up will really change anything for them. Lena, calm despite his cynicism, asks him what he will do if it does. She explains that to advance to the next stage, all humanity needs to do is perform well in the tournament. She adds that civilizations are categorized into tiers based on their control over cosmos force, a life energy that quantifies existence. This energy allows powers beyond common sense to manifest, but it can only be used once a civilization reaches a higher tier. Jinwol seems to understand now. He realizes that while Lena wants to use this mysterious power, it seems like it can only be harnessed after advancing to the next tier. He notes that they don't have anyone who can fight in the tournament, so she wants him to fight against these powerful beings and win. Lena agrees, adding that this is a good summary of the situation. She then explains something more profound. When a civilization advances, it doesn't just gain superpowers. What they gain is enlightenment, knowledge that cannot be acquired even after a lifetime of effort. She tells Jinwol that the knowledge humanity has gained so far through centuries of work isn't the true knowledge. Upon entering the space exploration era, humanity discovered the truth. What they thought they had earned through experience was only a small piece of information. The real knowledge is constantly being transmitted by the giant brain at the end of the universe. The beings who control this knowledge are known as the Sapiens, and they are the only Tier 5 civilization in the universe. The Sapiens are also the ones who host the tournament. She reveals that the knowledge is distributed unevenly to each civilization due to their different restrictions. This powerful, mysterious knowledge is what drives the competition and the advancement of civilizations. Jinwol scoffs, saying that this situation is boring. He tells Lena that, just like he said before, all she really wants is to use him to fight. Lena insists that he needs to listen to her because what he does will affect all of humanity. Jinwol dismisses her, telling her that instead of explaining, she should find someone else who believes in her cause. He waves her off, stating that no one would be foolish enough to risk their life for others. Suddenly, a bright hand appears in front of Jinwol. When he turns to look, it's Virtus. Without hesitation, Virtus unleashes a beam of light that completely disintegrates Jinwol's upper half. As the remains of Jinwol fall, Virtus calmly declares that the judgment execution is now complete. However, he is surprised to find that the person he judged came from such a low-tier civilization. Lena looks up, terrified. Virtus turns to her and says that because of her involvement in the Pixie resident murder case, he will now judge her. He extends his hand, preparing to do the same to her as he did to Jinwol. However, just as it seems Lena is about to meet the same fate, Jinwol, in a surprisingly undead-like state, calls out. His body is in tatters, resembling something like a zombie, but he is still alive. He asks Virtus why he left him in such a bad condition. Jinwol angrily tells Virtus not to move and warns him that he will make him look just like Jinwol does now. Earlier in Street 3 of Sector C on planet GSP, 3 members of the Piglo species are walking around. Among them is the same young Piglo girl from earlier. Her name is Mala. She begins telling the others about the Earthling sister who helped her. The other two, Grog and Kulek, listen attentively. Grog remarks that Earthlings seem braver than the rumors suggest, while Kulek adds that he will make sure to repay their gratitude. Just as they continue walking, they notice someone ahead of them. It's their representative fighter, Panan. Panan greets them, asking what they were chatting about so happily without him. Grog replies that their youngest nearly got into trouble after going to cheer for him. Mala, excited to see Panan, runs toward him and jumps into his arms. Panan laughs and hugs her back. Grog asks if Panan is okay, concerned as he has been through a lot. Panan assures them not to worry, saying he's in good shape and can even fight right now. It is then revealed that their civilization's ranking has improved significantly after Panan's victory over Agni. Panan asks what Grog and Kulek meant by Mala almost getting into trouble, but their conversation is interrupted when loud gunshots echo from a distance. The aliens around them start to panic, shouting that Judge Virtus has appeared in the street. They announce that everyone must evacuate because Virtus is chasing an Earthling who killed a pixie resident and fled the scene. Grog and Kulek exchange glances, sensing that this situation is strangely familiar to them. Mala tugs at Panan's hand, looking worried. Panan, noticing her unease, asks her what's wrong and if she needs something. Mala hesitates for a moment, trying to find the right words. Panan, curious, waits for her to explain what she wants to say. Meanwhile, the building collapses completely, sending rubble everywhere. Lena lies on the ground, staring at the pile of debris. Jinwol stands on top of it, explaining that this is the result of carelessly destroying someone else's body. He is using the pixie's power to keep Virtus down. But suddenly, the ground beneath his feet begins to glow brightly and holes start to form. Jinwol realizes that Virtus is about to break free. He quickly leaps off, moving away from the danger. Virtus, seeing what's happening, is in disbelief. He asks if Jinwol really absorbed the pixie's cosmos force. He notes that this Earthling is far more dangerous than he thought. Jinwol teases him, asking if Virtus regrets touching him now. He raises his foot and stomps it down hard, using a technique called the earth-splitting explosion. The ground shakes and there are massive explosions that follow. The streets begin to tremble, causing panic among the civilians. They start shouting that everyone needs to evacuate quickly. Lena, still confused, watches the scene. She wonders what Jinwol is doing as she stares at Virtus' back. Suddenly, she feels a hand cover her mouth. She is surprised to see Panan standing behind her, telling her to calm down. He says he's here to save her. Grog runs up to them. Panan scolds him, telling him that he had ordered him to take Mala and run away. Lena, still lost in thought, recognizes Panan as the fighter the little girl was cheering for earlier. Panan picks her up, but Lena, frustrated, yells that no one is listening to her today. Grog, running with urgency, reassures Panan that Mala is with Kulek, so there's nothing to worry about. He tells Panan to hurry and get them away from Virtus. Lena asks Panan what he wants with her. He explains that he's here to repay the favor she did for them last time. Their civilization always returns kindness. Grog tells Panan they need to leave now, but Lena, still confused, asks him to wait. Panan explains that saving her friend is impossible because the judges are monsters who have already reached the finals of the tournament. Meanwhile, Jinwol is using a clone technique to attack Virtus. Virtus, noticing the attack, comments that the Pixie civilization's cosmos force isn't the only trick Jinwol has. He raises his hand and creates a massive yellow orb. The orb fragments, sending beams of light in all directions and completely destroying clones in the area around them. Grog comments that it's overkill. Virtus says, so it was just a little trick, but unknown to him, Jinwol is already right behind him. He says he knew Virtus would say that, but it turns out Jinwol didn't lose control. With a finger pointed at Virtus's forehead, Jinwol prepares for another move. But Virtus teleports and claims that Jinwol is just an insignificant being. He blasts him away with a powerful force. Back with Lena, she's still yelling at Panan to let go of her, calling him an alien bastard. She tells him that if he's going to save someone, it should be the person fighting Virtus, not her. Grog asks if she wasn't listening, reminding her that they have no way of fighting a monster like Virtus. Panan, however, stands firm. He says enough already, explaining that Lena is the one who saved Mala. Grog tries to convince Panan to stop, saying their beliefs are outdated and should not be held onto. Panan tells him to be quiet, explaining that their civilization's ideals have been protected for a lifetime. Just then, something flies in from behind them, landing directly in front. Is something on fire? Panan looks down, confused, and realizes it's none other than Jinwol, badly burned as if he's been left in an air fryer for too long. Lena, seeing Jinwol, says this is the one she wanted help for. Grog quickly realizes that if Jinwol had been fighting Virtus, this can't be a good sign, as Virtus must be coming this way too. Before they can react, Virtus suddenly teleports behind them. Grog, frustrated, says he knew this would happen. He warns that they need to leave quickly, even if it means abandoning the Earthlings. Lena nervously looks down at Jinwol, wondering if he's still alive. He then starts to spit up blood, which makes her smile, relieved. She tells Panon to take a proper look at him, trying to convince him that he's alive. Jinwol continues to regenerate, even after being engulfed in Virtus's flames. Both Panon and Grog can't believe what they're seeing. Panon wonders if the Earthling's cosmos force could be regeneration, but he doubts that such a powerful ability could belong to such a lowly creature. Grog, seeing Virtus's cold demeanor, tries to convince him that they are not in the wrong. But Virtus cuts him off, saying this is enough. He tells them that if they let go of the criminals, he will let them leave unharmed. Grog asks Panon if he didn't hear him. This is their chance. Panon then turns to Lena, asking if she truly believes that Jinwol can survive. Lena confidently replies that she has seen him recover from worse injuries. Panon, considering this, tells her that if Jinwol can recover, they should take him to the GSP registration office immediately. If he becomes a representative fighter of Earth, even Virtus won't be able to touch him recklessly. Grog tries to convince Panon against this plan, but Panon is resolute. He removes his robe and prepares to face Virtus, saying that he will hold him off while they head to the office. Grog, reluctant but understanding, grabs Jinwol and starts running with Lena, telling Panon to make sure not to die here. Panon reassures them, saying that with his victory, they will have a weapon to surprise Virtus. Virtus sees them running and, sensing their attempt to escape, points his finger at them, preparing a powerful attack. His face shows he is in full justice mode, determined not to let them get away. The energy in his finger begins to charge up as he prepares to unleash the attack. Panon recognizes the danger and says he's heard about it before. Virtus became a judge because he represents the Heliconian people, and their light-based power has a weakness: darkness. Just then, darkness starts to surround Panon. He smiles and reveals that today the cosmic force of his civilization is the power of darkness. It turns out that the Piglo people's cosmic force changes every day. Panon believes that today's power must be the will of their ancestors, meant to help Mala's benefactor. Meanwhile, Lena, Grog, and Jinwol arrive at the registration office. There they meet Kuranos, the staff member. She tells them, despite their insistence, that she can't process the registration. She points out that Jinwol's condition doesn't seem good since he's still on fire. Lena tries to reassure her, saying he's fine and that his power is ultra regeneration, so he'll be fine. Outside, the noise draws the attention of other aliens. They overhear the conversation and realize that some Earthlings are trying to register for the tournament. One alien laughs and mocks the Earthlings, saying that their civilization is too weak to compete. Soon, everyone begins to laugh and predict that if they face the Earthlings, it'll be an easy win. They argue that the Earthlings should be allowed to participate, and they all push Kuranos to register them. Grog is confused, wondering why the others are helping the Earthlings, but the crowd chants for their registration. Kuranos finally agrees and says she'll do it. Lena is relieved and says it should have been done from the start. However, Kuranos then points to where Jinwol was and asks where he went. Both Lena and Grog are shocked and can't believe that he just ran off. Meanwhile, in Street G, Virtus holds Panon by the head, confused by Panon's decision to risk his life for the Earthlings. He doesn't understand why someone from a low-tier civilization would behave this way. Just then, Jinwol, now back in the game, calls out, warning Virtus that he won't be able to win. Jinwol appears above Virtus, preparing to strike. His aura begins to release powerful shockwaves, and he declares that Virtus will die this time. Virtus stretches out his hand and responds, saying that it's no surprise low-tier civilizations make such foolish decisions, claiming they are mentally unstable. Just then, a shadow emerges from the ground, wrapping around Virtus's arm, sealing his abilities. Panon yells out, urging Jinwol to attack with all his strength, while Virtus is unable to use his powers. Virtus is caught off guard. Jinwol claims whether his martial arts are significant or not, he can judge that after taking this blow, and lands a powerful punch on his head, knocking off his helmet. The punch hits hard, showing that Jinwol is not as weak as Virtus might have assumed. Meanwhile, at the Planetary Promotional Center, Mark is anxiously sitting and nervously biting his thumb. He blames Lena for everything that has happened. He keeps thinking that if she hadn't interfered in the first place, none of this trouble would have occurred. Suddenly, a loud explosion shakes the area and Mark quickly looks up, startled. Across the street, he sees a massive explosion and the civilians nearby start to panic. They wonder what is going on, with some speculating that it might be a terrorist attack. Mark, sensing the danger, immediately pulls out his name card. He mutters to himself that he's getting a bad feeling about the situation. It appears he is attempting to call Lena back to the fight. Meanwhile, Virtus is sitting on the ground, his helmet lying nearby as he covers his face. Panon is off to the side, seemingly unconscious. Virtus glares to his side as Jinwol stands nearby, laughing. Jinwol jokes that this is no joke and marvels at how Virtus managed to withstand such a powerful blow. He begins laughing, saying that this is the perfect opportunity to take Virtus's power since it seems incredibly useful. Virtus suddenly yells in rage, declaring that he will never forgive Jinwol. He accuses him of scratching the mask bestowed upon him by the divine and swears vengeance. His anger grows and he prepares to attack. For the first time, his face is revealed as he continues shouting, vowing to tear Jinwol apart. Virtus teleports directly above Jinwol, attempting to strike. Jinwol, however, laughs confidently, saying he had predicted Virtus's plan from the start. He leaps forward, narrowly avoiding the attack. But Virtus doesn't falter and immediately follows up, appearing right behind Jinwol in an instant. Jinwol mutters to himself, acknowledging that Virtus's flickering movement technique is proving to be quite troublesome. Virtus grabs Jinwol by the head, treating it like a basketball, and slams him with incredible force. The impact sends Jinwol flying, breaking the sound barrier before he crashes into a nearby building. Virtus doesn't stop there and begins charging another attack in his hand. This time, he releases multiple streams of energy, each one hitting with heavy destructive force, bombarding Jinwol relentlessly. Mark arrives on the scene and immediately recognizes the chaotic battle, just as Lena had described. He confirms the presence of the person they had been worried about. Lena, hearing this, expresses her relief that Jinwol is safe. Grog is shocked by how quickly Jinwol seems to have recovered from his earlier state. However, Mark tells her he doesn't think this is the time to be relieved. Lena asks, what is he talking about? Mark clarifies that while Jinwol is there, the situation is far from safe. Meanwhile, Virtus, walking slowly towards Jinwol, marvels at his ability to recover even after sustaining such devastating damage. Jinwol is barely recognizable, almost reduced to ash from the earlier attacks. Virtus admits his surprise, questioning how someone from a lower-tier civilization could possess such overwhelming power. He declares that it ends now and begins to prepare a final decisive attack, pulling his fist back with immense energy. Just as Virtus is about to strike, Kurano's voice interrupts. She yells at him to wait. Virtus halts his attack and responds through telepathy, asking what she wants. Kuranos announces that the Earthling has been registered to represent Earth in the tournament. Virtus, visibly confused, questions her claim, stating that he has been present the entire time and finds the announcement nonsensical. Kuranos smirks, pointing out that the Earthling has already subscribed to the channel. She suggests that instead of targeting him, Virtus should focus his efforts on those who have not subscribed, thereby teaching them a lesson. She explains to Virtus what happened 30 minutes earlier. She recalls how all the aliens in the area caused an uproar, insisting that she register the Earthling. They accused her of discrimination, calling her a racist, and demanded that she finalize the registration immediately. Annoyed by their persistence, Kuranos stood firm and told Lena and Grog that their stubbornness would make her give in. Grog, frustrated, called her a racist and questioned her behavior, while Lena, equally annoyed, began angrily arguing with her. Kuranos, exasperated, told them to calm down. She cannot do anything until their representative is present. Then a man standing behind Lena interrupted the argument, politely asking if there was a system for provisional registration in cases where the competitor couldn't be present in person. Hearing this, the other aliens began murmuring among themselves. Some claimed they had heard of such a system, while others admitted they had no idea it even existed. Kuranos confirmed that it wasn't a widely known policy, especially not for lower-tier civilizations. However, she acknowledged that using this system might be possible in their case and agreed to proceed. She slammed down a stack of paperwork, telling Lena that if she filled out the documents by hand and submitted them, she would register the fighter. However, if they couldn't complete it, they would have to give up and leave. Grog looked at the papers and immediately grew angry, pointing out that the forms were not in the common language but in an upper-tier civilization's language. He questioned how they were supposed to understand the illegible scribbles. Kuranos smirked and dismissed their frustration, sarcastically saying it was unfortunate they couldn't read it. Grog, frustrated, argued that it's only natural they wouldn't understand the forms. He demanded that Kuranos provide something in the common language. Kuranos responded dismissively, explaining that the provisional registration system was created for the convenience of higher civilizations. Naturally, the documents are written in a language familiar to them. Grog looked even angrier but finds himself unable to refute her reasoning. The other aliens began to murmur among themselves, agreeing that this situation seems hopeless. They wonder why the Earthlings are so desperate to register their fighter right now. However, at that moment, Lena surprised everyone by picking up the pen and starting to write on the forms. The other aliens watch her in disbelief, wondering what she's doing. Grog, equally shocked, asks how Lena can even read the upper-tier civilization's language. Strangely, Lena filled in the form and presented it to Kuranos. Kuranos, stunned, snatches the paper from Lena. She accused Lena of bluffing, as it's impossible for someone from a lower civilization to know such a complex language. However, much to her shock, Lena wasn't bluffing. The writing on the paper is correct and precise, showing that Lena can indeed read and write in the advanced language. Kuranos is left in disbelief, struggling to comprehend how an Earthling could achieve this. She remarks that with the way Earthlings' minds typically work, it should be impossible for them to distinguish the intricate symbols and structures of such an advanced language. After listening to this, Virtus remarks that this must mean someone from the high-tier civilizations had been secretly helping Earthlings. Kuranos considers this possibility but remains amazed. She explains that even if Lena had somehow memorized millions of words, she would still struggle to make sense of the sentences. Kuranos adds that understanding the language fully would require memorizing every possible sentence structure, something far beyond normal capacity. She admits that even someone like her, who is from a civilization specializing in language, would find such a feat nearly impossible. Yet Lena has defied these expectations. Kuranos points out that even if someone is assisting her, it isn't illegal, so the registration cannot be cancelled. Virtus acknowledges this but remains skeptical. Looking down at Jinwol, he expresses disbelief that someone would risk their life for their benefactor. Now, with a helper who can secretly teach the language of higher civilizations without Kuranos detecting it, it seems as though the entire universe is conspiring to save this Earthling. Virtus then resummons his mask and stretches out his hand, deciding to let this situation slide for now. However, he warns that he will need to restrain any further tricks like this. His hand glows and he teleports Jinwol and Panem with him. Mark reports back to Lena, saying that the judge took Jinwol and some scoundrel with him and disappeared. Lena, confused, asks what he means, while Grog gets irritated, angrily reacting to Mark calling his brother a scoundrel. Kuranos interrupts and explains that both Jinwol and the other person were simply moved to the recovery room for competitors. Grog, still annoyed, asks why Kuranos is suddenly using an informal tone, but he thanks her anyway. Kuranos, clearly fed up, snaps at them to leave immediately. A week later in the recovery room, Jinwol is in a pod with wires and masks. He is put there to recover, but it seems like he has not recovered even a little bit. Mark, watching his condition, asks Lena if she truly believes he'll be able to compete in this state. Lena reassures him, confident that Jinwol will recover fully in no time. Just then, a man enters the room. He comments that it has been a while since he has heard Lena make such a bold claim. However, he doubts her confidence, pointing out that the man in the recovery chamber looks like he's barely clinging to life. This man is Claris I, the team commander for Earth. He says that it seems he placed too much trust in Lena, and because of that, he has decided to proceed with the original competitor for the match in 2 days. Lena pleads with him, asking for more time, but before Claris can respond, another figure bursts into the room. He yells at Lena, telling her to listen to Claris and place her trust in the Earth's strongest man. He leaps forward, jumping straight over Claris and lands with a dramatic superhero pose. This is Marcel Blade, known as Earth's strongest warrior. Lena, unimpressed, ignores Marcel entirely and begins banging on the glass of the recovery chamber, yelling for Jinwol to wake up. Claris, trying to calm her down, places a hand on her shoulder. He tells her not to worry so much because Marcel is Earth's current strongest fighter and was personally chosen by him. Claris goes on to explain that the suit Marcel is wearing represents the pinnacle of all the knowledge humanity has accumulated. He assures Lena that after Marcel's match, no civilization will ever dare to underestimate Earthlings again. A new civilization is introduced, the Basarians, who rank 10,320 in the hierarchy. Their home planet is a harsh, unforgiving environment composed of dense rock with lava and toxic gas constantly spewing in every direction. The planet, often referred to as Hell, forced the Basarians to evolve their bodies to extreme physical limits just to survive. Lena explains to the group that their next opponent is a Basarian named Crox Jabrick. She emphasizes that he is notorious even among his own people for his extraordinary physical abilities, making him a dangerous opponent. Lena begins detailing what they need to focus on during the upcoming match, but she is interrupted by a random man. The man confidently dismisses her concerns, saying that the Basarians are at the same civilization level as Earth, which is sufficient for them to win. Mockingly, he calls Lena Miss PR and starts picking his nose, telling her to leave the rest of them and get out of the way. This man is introduced as Marshall Steele, the combat team manager. He taunts Lena further, mentioning that the PR branch she represents was wrecked during a clash with alien scumbags. He blames her, saying it's her fault for not being more careful, and taunts she has nowhere else to go now. Lena grows visibly annoyed, but before she can respond, a drone enters the room from behind. The drone announces that the contestant for the next match must proceed to the waiting area. Marshall Steele stands up, announcing that it's their turn now. Lena tries to stop him, running toward him and saying that she has prepared a strategy. However, Marshall raises his hand to stop her and dismisses her concerns. He tells her that they don't need strategies and suggests that she just enjoy the show. Lena grows frustrated, questioning why he refuses to listen to her. She wonders where his overconfidence is coming from, pointing out that he has been stuck on Earth and doesn't understand the reality of facing aliens. She emphasizes that these aliens don't follow Earth's rules, and that victory against a superior civilization can only be achieved through careful strategy and analysis. She reminds him that humans are at the bottom of the universal hierarchy, making tactics their only way to win. Before Lena can continue, Clarice suddenly pulls out a gun and fires a shot past her, startling her. He coldly comments that her speech wasn't exactly inspiring before Amashin questions whether she has become too detached from Earth herself. However, Marshall Blade steps in, blocking the bullet meant for Lena. Clarice explains that for the past century, humanity has poured everything, budget, time, and workforce, into winning this tournament, showing how much is at stake. Marshall adjusts the band-aid on his nose and reminds Lena of their collective goal. Without hesitation, he suits up in his advanced combat armor and strikes a confident pose, signaling his readiness for the match. Giving Lena a thumbs up, he tells her to have faith in him. Marshall then laughs and rushes off to the arena, leaving Lena feeling far less optimistic than the others. Meanwhile, the announcer thanks the audience for their patience and officially declares the start of the 8th bracket preliminaries. In the audience, Mark is snacking on some purple potato-like food, possibly roly-poly treats, while looking around. He wonders where Lena is as the match is about to begin. Lena arrives at the audience area and grabs one of Mark's roly-poly snacks, asking why he's sitting there eating alone. She then looks at the snack and, like everyone else, wonders what on Earth or anywhere else it actually is. Mark explains that he got it from some people who claim to know her. Curious, Lena asks who these people are, and when she looks over, she spots Grog and Panon sitting beside them. Feeling unsettled, Lena remarks that it's creepy they're following her. Grog immediately denies it, insisting it's just a coincidence. He comments on Earthling's current matchup, saying their luck seems pretty good, and this should be an easy win for them. However, Lena's expression reveals she doesn't share his optimism. Noticing her blank stare, Panon asks why she looks so concerned. The judge interrupts, announcing for the contestants to enter the arena. The crowd cheers as Marshall Blade steps out confidently, raising his hands like a champion. The judge gives him a shout-out, reminding the audience that Earth ranks 12,700, firmly at the bottom of the hierarchy. Grog, however, looks puzzled and asks who Marshall is, as he was under the impression that someone else was her representative. Panon explains that the person Lena is thinking of is still in the recovery capsule. Lena, confused, asks how Panon knows this. Panon raises his hand to reveal a bracelet on his wrist. He asks if Lena recognizes it, and she identifies it as a force suppressor. Panon confirms and explains that when he woke up from the recovery capsule, it was attached to him. He further mentions that the position and form of a force suppressor vary depending on the individual, but their representative in recovery should have one too. Lena starts to think and recalls noticing something strange on Jinwol's neck. Mark, curious about the bracelet, asks what a force suppressor does. Lena explains that, as the name suggests, it suppresses cosmos force. She further elaborates that some abilities tied to cosmos force can drain life with even brief usage, which is why civilizations with such powers are required to wear suppressors on other planets. Panon adds that the contestant suppressors cannot be removed outside of the arena. Mark, still trying to make sense of it, says he thought Jinwol was just a martial artist and asks what cosmos force has to do with him. Lena hypothesizes that Jinwol's rapid regeneration could be linked to cosmos force. While rapid regeneration is rare, it's not unheard of. However, based on the abilities Jinwol has mentioned from ancient Earth, Lena feels it's far too unique to simply be labeled as cosmos force. She begins to wonder what exactly has been sealed on him with the suppressor. The judge calls for the next contestant to enter, and the arena doors open. On one side, a Bazirian lies on the ground, while another appears to be in a bizarre position, as though they are being choked. A pixie enters the gate. He calls another pixie to come over and verify if the other contestant is an Earthling. A smaller pixie comes running and says it's hard to discern the features through the mask, but it's likely him. He remarks that all Earthlings seem to have similar physiques. The pixie begins walking toward the arena, saying he was informed that the person responsible for his kin's death would be competing as the Earth representative. The crowd, excited for the Bazirian contestant Crocs Jabrick, chants his name loudly. However, when the door fully opens, it isn't Crocs who emerges. It's a pixie. The crowd falls silent, confused. They point out that Bazirians are known for their single eye, but this individual clearly has two. Murmurs ripple through the audience as they realize something is wrong. The judge, equally baffled, demands to know who would dare barge into someone else's match like this. The pixie steps forward and introduces himself as Twinkies, the representative of the pixie civilization, which holds a ranking of 1,300. Mark, stunned by the unexpected twist, turns to Lena, asking if she's seen the same thing. The judge, clearly irritated, declares that he doesn't care who Twinkies is and orders him to stop disrupting the match and bring out the correct contestant. Twinkies calmly responds, saying that if the judge is referring to Croc's Jabrick, the Bayzerian will not be participating in this match. Instead, Twinkies declares that he will take Croc's place. The crowd erupts in outrage, shouting that this is nonsense and demanding that Twinkies leave the sacred arena. The Bayzerians angrily question what Twinkies did to Croc's, calling him insane for disrupting the match. The judge silences the entire arena with a deafening yell, which causes everyone's ears to ache. Slamming his fist onto the desk, the judge warns Twinkies to choose his next words carefully. Twinkies, undeterred, says he wants to get straight to the point. He accuses the Earthling contestant of being a murderer who killed an innocent member of his civilization. The crowd is shocked and confused, murmuring that it would be impossible for an Earthling to kill a pixie. Meanwhile, Marcel, still recovering from the judge's earlier yell, tries to gather his thoughts. Twinkies explains that every pixie wears a suppressor, and this Earthling took advantage of their vulnerability to murder one of his kin. His voice rises with emotion as he begs the judge for a chance to avenge the innocent life lost. The crowd starts to wonder if Twinkies' accusations might be true. They recall the destruction of the promotional center the other day and begin connecting the dots, further fueling their suspicions. The tension in the arena continues to rise as everyone awaits the judge's decision. Mark turns to Lena, saying that this entire situation is just a misunderstanding. Lena, trying to calm him, says there's no need to worry because no one would ever consider such a ridiculous proposal. However, almost immediately the judge shocks everyone by granting Twinkies permission to take Croc's spot in the match. The judge appears intrigued, commenting that a warrior willing to risk his life to replace another contestant and avenge his kin is far more entertaining than watching matches between weaklings. Lena protests, calling the decision absurd and urging the judge to reconsider, but Mark quickly tells her to stay quiet. Before Lena can respond, someone from Bayzerians in the crowd speaks up, questioning then what will happen to the Bayzerians after such a decision. However, his words are cut short as his head suddenly explodes. Mark, horrified, yells at Lena to put her hand down, both of them unable to process what just happened. The judge dismisses the uproar in the arena, announcing that the match has been delayed long enough and must proceed without further interruptions. He formally introduces Twinkies as the substitute contestant, granting him Croc's place in the match. Meanwhile, Marcel finally regains full awareness, confused about what is happening. The judge then asks the crowd if they believe this pixie will succeed in avenging his kin. The crowd uproars, and the judge announces to begin Group 8's third match of the preliminary round. The audience, whipped into a frenzy, begins chanting for Twinkies, cheering him to avenge his kin and kill the Earthling. It leaves Marcel even more baffled about the situation. Lena, panicked, rushes toward director Ive Claris, shouting at him for sitting around so leisurely. She insists that he needs to protest to the tournament committee immediately. Claris looks at her strangely, unfazed by her urgency. Claris calmly asks why a protest would be necessary. Lena, frustrated, points out that the contestant has been switched mid-match, which is a clear violation of the tournament rules. However, Claris, still relaxed and smoking a cigar, dismisses her concerns. He reminds her that it doesn't matter if there has been a change because the person who ordered the match to continue is one of the 6 gods of the universe, Ensepian Leviathan. He explains that no one can possibly challenge or overturn the decision of a god. Lena, seething with frustration, slams her hands on the table, trying to process the situation. She walks away, muttering that this means the tournament rules never mattered in the first place and that she will treat the situation with the same disregard moving forward. Meanwhile, in the arena, the crowd begin chanting for the execution of the murderer, fueling the already chaotic atmosphere. Marcel, standing in the center, looks around confused as objects are thrown at him from the stands. He wonders why the crowd's mood has shifted so drastically and who the opponent standing before him is. This isn't the same person he saw earlier in the briefing. Marcel assumes something must have happened when his suit experienced issues earlier, but he decides it doesn't matter. He focuses on his objective, reminding himself that his task is unchanged. He must fight for the sake of humanity. With determination, Marcel limbers up and immediately dashes forward, launching a punch with all his strength. His opponent, Twinkies, sidesteps the attack with ease. Marcel compliments Twinkies on his reflexes, and then confidently states that he's only getting started. Activating the thrusters on his back, Marcel propels himself forward at an even faster speed than before. His punches now come in rapid succession, each one carrying immense power as he hits Twinkies relentlessly. Mark, watching from the audience, remarks on how serious Marcel seems, acknowledging that he isn't holding back. Grog, impressed, comments that the Earthling is performing better than expected. However, Panon seems less optimistic, silently observing the fight with a different opinion. Marcel suddenly raises his hand into the air and reddish electricity begins to surge around his arm. He declares it's time for his next move and charges forward, using a skill called Buster. The attack leaves a fiery red trail as Marcel strikes Twinkies directly in the face, sending him crashing into the arena floor with devastating force. The impact creates a massive shockwave, shaking the arena and causing part of the floor to shatter. Leviathan, the incipient judge, continues shoutcasting the match, describing how the arena floor is breaking under the overwhelming power of the attack. He wonders aloud if this might be the end for Twinkies. The crowd holds its breath, unsure of what will happen next. Proud of Marcel's performance, Claris breaks his cigar while seemingly lost in thought. He reflects on how Marcel has once again achieved what seems impossible, just as he did the day they first met. A flashback begins, showing General Claris and a young Marcel hiding behind a corner as a soldier nearby is shot. Enemy men laugh as they search for him, taunting him and daring the great general to come out, calling him as good as dead. Claris the general tells Marcel to use the opportunity to escape. He orders Marcel to inform headquarters of their location and ensure that this dangerous group is eradicated. However, instead of retreating, Marcel steps out, firing his weapon. Claris yells at him, demanding to know what he's doing. Marcel replies that the general's second mission is to eliminate these men, and he plans to complete it immediately. Ignoring orders to stop, Marcel charges into the fight as gunfire intensifies. The enemies, shocked, shout in disbelief, questioning what kind of monster can continue fighting after being shot. Screams echo around the corner as Marcel systematically takes them down. Moments later, Marcel returns, dragging one of the enemy soldiers by his head. He declares that they can now return to headquarters together and prepare for the next mission. The flashback ends as Claris, back in the present, continues to watch the fight. In the arena, Leviathan calls out to the crowd, asking if they can see the silhouette in the smoke. Everyone looks on in disbelief as the figure behind Marcel emerges. It's Twinkies, still standing. Leviathan announces that the match is not over, as Twinkies appears completely unfazed, showing no signs of damage from Marcel's powerful attacks. Marcel acknowledges Twinkies' incredible endurance and prepares for another attack. However, before he can strike, a sudden blast rips through the air. Marcel's arm is severed and flies off, leaving him staring in disbelief at his missing limb. His body doesn't even register the shock at first. Leviathan, equally stunned, asks the crowd if they saw what just happened. Claris, watching from the stands, goes pale as the reality sets in. Twinkies has completely ripped off Marcel's arm. Marcel's body finally reacts as pain shoots through him. He clutches at his shoulder, screaming in agony. Looking up, he yells in confusion, trying to understand what just happened. Twinkies calmly approaches, questioning why Marcel is so surprised and asks if he has never fought his kind before. Marcel, still in shock, demands to know what Twinkies means. Before he can get an answer, his suit suddenly warps and sends him flying backward. Twinkies wonders aloud if this is the same person who supposedly killed Mr. Picky. He then calls out to the small pixie and asks him to confirm if Marcel is the one who attacked Mr. Picky. The small pixie approaches cautiously and examines Marcel's face. After a moment, the pixie shakes his head and crosses his arms in an X symbol, signaling that this isn't the same person. Twinkies, now closing the distance, smirks and admits that he already knew the truth. He declares that there's no way someone like Mr. Picky would fall to an idiot like him. Twinkie stretches his hand out toward Marcel, speaking in a cold tone and demanding to know where the one he's looking for is. Leviathan, still narrating the match, announces that Twinkies has now torn off Marcel's leg. Marcel writhes on the ground in unbearable pain as blood pools around him. Claris watches in horror, unable to look away. The rest of the aliens in the audience begin murmuring, realizing this is no longer a fair match but an execution. Even Leviathan acknowledges that the fight has devolved into what feels like a torture show for the Earthling. Twinkies lifts Marcel high into the air, holding him above his head. At that moment, Marshal Steele from the audience yells for Twinkies to stop, angrily calling him an alien bastard. Marshal then pleads with Marcel to end it, shouting that the match is already over and begging him to surrender. Marcel, bleeding profusely and barely able to move, refuses. He declares that this mission is bigger than him. It involves the lives of billions of humans. Despite his injuries, he begins charging his fist with energy and lunges forward for another attack. His determination seems unbreakable. Twinkies, unimpressed, calmly points his finger downward. With a tremendous force, Marcel is slammed into the ground, creating a massive impact that causes him to spit up blood. Leviathan, continuing his narration, remarks that Marcel's final, desperate attack has been effortlessly blocked. He grimly concludes that this seems to be the end of Earth's journey in the tournament. Ive, Claris, and the rest of the Earth team watch in despair, feeling like everything is over. Just as the mood reaches its lowest point, Lena bursts back into view, visibly out of breath but full of anger. She questions the situation, demanding to know who gave Twinkies the right to end someone else's journey. Without hesitation, she shoves Jinwol forward with incredible strength. Somehow, she manages to hurl him into the fray, surprising everyone. Lena yells with determination, declaring that the journey of Earthlings is just beginning. However, as she speaks, a robot grabs the back of her head to pull her back, but she resists. The aliens in the audience jeer, asking why she's throwing trash into the arena. They demand to get it out of here. Twinkies looks down at Jinwol, who has been hurled into the arena. He seems confused and wonders what's happening. Lena, ignoring the insults from the crowd, calls out to Marcel, praising him for holding on as long as he did. She tells him that his mission is complete and to leave the rest to Jinwol. At that moment, the little pixie yells out to Twinkies, identifying Jinwol as the one who killed Mr. Picky. Twinkies, now focused, questions if that trash, the guy who just flew in, has killed Mr. Picky. To his shock, Jinwol suddenly begins to stand up. His movements surprise everyone. Twinkies stares in disbelief, pointing out that there was no sign of life from him just moments ago. Jinwol, now standing tall, mutters that the next time he sees Virtus, he'll rip his head off. He then looks around the arena, seeming confused about his surroundings. Luckily, as he moves, the suppression device on his neck falls off, hitting the ground. He wonders where the hell he's in again. A flashback begins, showing the moments before this confrontation. Marcel is seen crawling on the floor, barely holding on. Leviathan comments on the hopelessness of the situation, stating that there's no chance of a counterattack. Grog, watching, admits that while he had some hope, he knew the difference in strength was simply too much. Meanwhile, Mark is distracted, scrolling on TikTok, seemingly uninterested in the outcome of the fight. Mark suddenly receives a call from Lena. He asks her where she is, mentioning that it looks like Earth has been eliminated. Lena, however, interrupts him and demands that he come to her immediately. Mark, confused but obedient, agrees, telling her to stop barking at him. Mark rushes through the hallway, glancing around and noticing a sign for Gate 5. As he rounds a corner, he hears a robotic voice instructing someone to put the patient down. Mark spots Lena sprinting down the hallway while being chased by a group of robots. Lena yells for Mark to hurry and stop the pursuers. Instead of intervening, Mark panics and starts running alongside her. Frustrated, Lena demands to know why he's running instead of stopping the robots. Mark shouts back, asking how he's supposed to stop them with no warning, and questions what she's carrying. Then he notices Jinwol and screams in disbelief, asking what she's been doing. Lena explains that she's just trying to give the people of Earth some hope. Mark, incredulous, accuses her of mocking them, but Lena brushes him off, promising to explain everything later. For now, she orders him to hold off the robots for as long as possible. Before Mark can argue further, Lena backhands him, knocking him to the floor. Mark yells after her, asking where she is taking Jinwol, but Lena dismisses his concern, saying she won't forget his honorable sacrifice. Meanwhile, the little pixie is standing bored in the arena. He seems to have lost interest in the match. Suddenly, he hears the robotic voice commanding the Earthlings to stop. Turning toward the commotion, little pixie instantly recognizes Lena as she appears with Jinwol. However, before he can process the chaos, Lena throws Jinwol into the arena. The robots quickly pin Lena down, forcing her head to the ground. Leviathan, visibly irritated, asks what is going on. One of the robots begins to explain, but Leviathan cuts it off, ordering it to remove the trash and Lena from the arena immediately. Lena, refusing to back down, shouts with defiance, declaring that Jinwol is no trash. She insists he is a true warrior, one who single-handedly defeated 2 pixies and fought on equal footing against Virtus, the formidable judge of Zone 3. Her bold proclamation stirs mixed reactions in the crowd. Panon chuckles and points out that Lena is conveniently leaving out some important details. He shrugs, saying it doesn't matter to him either way. Other aliens in the crowd call Lena a liar, questioning her claims. However, some pause, recalling the explosion that occurred on Z Street, which aligns with her story. Lena presses on, arguing that if the substitution for the opposing player was allowed in the name of revenge, then she has brought the real target of that revenge. She demands that Jinwol be approved as a substitute contestant. Her statement causes a stir, with Grog nervously laughing and saying there's no way she's trying to argue against an Encipian. Panon, also impressed by her audacity, remarks that Lena has fiery determination. Leviathan pauses, visibly considering Lena's argument. He admits that her determination is impressive, especially for an Earthling, but adds that it's too late to make changes since the match is technically over and cannot be rewound. He points out that the representative of Earth is already defeated. However, just then, Marcel, bloodied and battered, yells out that the match isn't over. There is no way he is admitting defeat. Leviathan, surprised, comments that he had assumed Marcel was already dead, but he is not. He thinks for a moment and then approves the substitution, acknowledging the situation is valid. The audience erupts in shock and curiosity. Claris, watching from the stands, takes another puff from his cigar. He remarks with pride that Marcel has done well enough. Lena laughs triumphantly, declaring that with this decision, Earth's future still has a chance. However, her moment of victory is cut short as a robot picks her up, telling her to stop talking and that she is coming with them. Lena flails her arms and kicks wildly in protest as they carry her away. Meanwhile, Twinkies looks at Jinwol, questioning if this lifeless figure could really be the one who defeated his kin. He doubts Jinwol is even alive. Just then, life returns to Jinwol's eyes, and he suddenly stands up, leaving Twinkies visibly confused. Leviathan, watching with interest, remarks on the unexpected development. He comments on Jinwol's impressive regeneration ability and notes that this might make the match more interesting than he anticipated. Jinwol looks around the arena, seemingly unaware of what has been happening. He complains about the noise and confusion, wondering where he is. Twinkies, seizing the moment, steps forward, announcing his intent to avenge his kin. Jinwol sighs, recognizing the energy emanating from Twinkies. He dismisses him as just another weakling, saying he's not interested in such fights anymore. Turning his back on Twinkies, Jinwol declares that his priority is to find Lena and figure out what is happening. Twinkies, refusing to let him leave, grabs Jinwol's arm. Jinwol stops and, with irritation, calls him persistent, reiterating that he has no time for weaklings. However, before he can react further, he feels himself being lifted into the air. Confused, he looks down, realizing Twinkies is displaying incredible strength. Jinwol, now annoyed, rears his hand back and warns Twinkies. He declares that he showed him mercy once, but it won't happen again. With a swift motion, he swipes his hand forward, and a spray of blood flies through the air. Jinwol looks down and notices something unsettling. His own hand is broken. Confused, he realizes something is wrong with his body. Twinkies, now furious, accuses him of not only killing his kin, but also mocking his civilization. He declares that someone from an inferior race like Jinwol has no right to stand against him. Twinkie slams Jinwol into the arena floor with immense force, shattering it. Blood spurts from Jinwol's mouth, but he doesn't waste a moment and immediately leaps into the air, putting distance between himself and Twinkies. Jinwol wonders what Virtus might have done to his body. He realizes he can't use his martial arts properly, except for his immortal spirit foundation, a skill that barely sustains him. He accepts that he has no other choice and prepares himself for the fight. Meanwhile, Twinkies begins to grow larger, his body swelling with power. He charges forward, delivering a massive punch aimed directly at Jinwol. Jinwol, unable to dodge, resolves to take the blow head-on. The impact is catastrophic, obliterating the midsection of his body and splitting him into two. The crowd gasps in shock at the sheer brutality of the attack. Twinkies laughs triumphantly, mocking Jinwol and questioning what an inferior species like him could possibly do. Before Twinkies can revel further, Jinwol suddenly moves. With surprising precision, he shoves his fingers directly into Twinkies' eyes, causing him to scream in agony. Jinwol doesn't stop there. He follows up by jamming his thumb into Twinkies' mouth, unhinging his jaw. Using his other hand, he slams Twinkies' jaw shut, cutting off his own thumb in the process. With a chilling resolve, Jinwol taunts Twinkies, daring him to go ahead and eat that. Twinkies, filled with contempt, dismisses Jinwol as nothing more than trash. He claps his hands together with incredible force, creating a devastating shockwave that disintegrates Jinwol's upper body into nothing but a mist. The only part of Jinwol left in the arena is his severed legs. Leviathan, narrating the fight, declares Twinkies' strength overwhelming, emphasizing that he has completely obliterated Jinwol's upper half. Twinkies, however, doesn't look triumphant. Instead, his eyes are watery as he realizes what just happened. He begins to question what he had been forced to eat earlier. Twinkies angrily vows to destroy Jinwol again the moment he regenerates, determined not to let the fight end. Suddenly, Jinwol's voice echoes, asking if Twinkies really thinks he can follow through with that promise. Twinkies freezes as he feels something strange happening. Jinwol's hands emerge from inside Twinkies' mouth, forcefully pushing outward. Twinkies' jaws snap apart with a sickening crack, his head jerking backward from the sheer force. Clutching his jaw in agony, Twinkies realizes too late what is happening. Jinwol, fully regenerating, comes out of Twinkies' mouth and lands on the ground. His body reforms as if nothing had happened. Moments before, Leviathan announced that Jinwol's upper body is completely crushed. He asked the audience if regeneration is even possible in his current state. However, what he witnesses is something incredible. A hand coming out of Twinkie's mouth. He wonders, could it be Jinwol? Back to present, Leviathan excitedly commentates that Jinwol is using the energy generated during the regeneration to launch an attack. He is truly a living bomb. Twinkies, however, has quickly dislocated his own jaw to avoid a fatal injury. Grog also seems astonished. He comments who would have thought regeneration could be used for offense too. He tells Panon if Jinwol can land 1 or 2 attacks like that. Panon agrees with him, saying then the Earthling's side might be able to win this match easily. Just then, a mysterious alien woman approaches Panon and Grog. She looks at Panon and comments that his fighting skills are far better than his ability to judge a match. She adds, with a hint of regret, that the Earthlings have their only chance to win, but now it's gone. She warns that Twinkies will not give them such an opening again, making the possibility of Jinwol winning absolutely zero, an impossible feat. Grog, unsettled by her presence, questions why she is casually sitting with him. The woman, unfazed, tells him there's no need to be so cold. She introduces herself as Ackerman, a space journalist. She explains that she became interested in their group after Grog's brother defeated Agni and even blocked an attack from the so-called invincible Virtus. Panon, surprised, asks how she knows about such a secretive event, as very few people were aware of his involvement in the fight. Ackerman chuckles, reminding him that she is a journalist and has her ways of uncovering hidden truths. Panon, not entirely convinced, changes the subject and asks why she believes Jinwol has no chance of winning. Ackerman explains her reasoning. While Jinwol did face Virtus, she points out that Virtus was using only a tiny fraction, 1/10,000th of his true strength. She acknowledges that surviving even that much is an incredible feat, but she downplays Jinwol's abilities, calling him a regenerator who barely survived. In her view, a creature desperately clinging to life cannot be compared to a proud warrior from a higher civilization. Panon, not backing down, counters that surviving against a judge, even in those circumstances, proves Jinwol has the abilities of at least a third-level civilization. However, Ackerman remains skeptical, emphasizing the stark difference in experience and strength. Meanwhile, in the arena, Jinwol continues his relentless attack on Twinkies. Twinkies defends himself while mocking Jinwol for underestimating the power of upper civilizations. Twinkies, filled with pride, raises his hand and summons a massive metallic ball. With a burst of energy, he hurls the giant sphere toward Jinwol, proclaiming the strength and centuries of experience of his 1,300-rank civilization. The massive metallic ball crashes down onto Jinwol, burying him beneath a mountain of metal debris. Grog, stunned by the sheer force of the attack, cannot believe what he just witnessed. He wonders aloud where such a gigantic object came from. Ackerman, remaining calm, explains that the ball had been there the entire time. Grog, confused, presses her, asking if she means the tiny metallic bead Twinkies had in his hand somehow turned into this enormous metal structure. Ackerman confirms and explains further. She reveals that most aliens underestimate metal manipulation, thinking of it as simple magnetic telekinesis. However, Twinkies can manipulate metal at the molecular level. He compresses it into an ultra-dense metallic bead for portability, allowing him to summon massive weapons at will. She continues, noting that with the current amount of metal Twinkies possesses, it is as if Jinwol is fighting the largest battleship in the entire universe. Meanwhile, from within the crushed debris, Jinwol forces his way out. His body regenerates quickly, and without hesitation, he rushes toward Twinkies again. However, Twinkies, with effortless precision, uses the same metal wreckage to smash into Jinwol's face, sending him flying backward. Grog, watching the fight, yells in frustration. He cannot believe the extent of Twinkies' hidden power and accuses the pixie of mocking them by holding back. Ackerman, calmly observing, remarks that from the perspective of a first-level civilization, it might seem that way. Grog, growing agitated, demands to know what she means by that. Ackerman explains herself further. She reassures Grog that she isn't trying to insult him. Instead, she explains the true nature of the GSP tournament. The event, held once every 100 years, is watched by the entire universe. It serves as a massive stage for civilizations to showcase their technology and specialties. For Twinkies to reveal all his cards against a mere Earthling would be a strategic mistake. Even if he wins, it would be considered a loss for his civilization's reputation. She adds another layer to the explanation. The metal Twinkies is using is not just an ordinary material. It is the lifeblood of pixie technology and identity. For him to use such a precious resource against a first-level civilization like Earth could be seen as humiliating, reducing the prestige of a higher civilization. Twinkie stands over Jinwol, who lies beneath a metallic mass crushing his face. Sparks of golden energy dance from Twinkie's hands as he begins to speak. He shares the history of his people, the Pixies, and their unique connection to metal. Twinkies explains that every pixie is born with a few hundred grams of iron in their body. By the 6th month of life, this iron solidifies within them and they expel it through a natural process known as iron ejection. The expelled iron, called soul steel, is considered sacred by the pixies. Although it is a low-strength metal with limited practical use, every pixie views their soul steel as a part of themselves and a spiritual guardian. For generations, this tradition symbolized peace and harmony in their culture. However, everything changed when the Galactic Alliance arrived. The Pixies, a peace-loving civilization that had always avoided conflict, were helplessly defeated in their first-ever GSP match. The loss was broadcast across the universe, turning their peaceful ways into a source of ridicule and scorn. Their resources were then plundered under the guise of trade deals, leaving the Pixies humiliated and vulnerable. Desperate to save his people, the Pixie King initiated a radical and dangerous experiment. He forced newborn pixies to consume metal for the first 6 months of their lives. The hope was that the excess iron would produce stronger and more durable soul steel. Tragically, 70% of the children perished, unable to handle the strain of expelling the accumulated metal. Even among the survivors, most produced low-quality, unimpressive soul steel due to irregular internal circulation. Yet from this tragedy emerged one extraordinary exception, the beloved Prince Twinkies. His body adapted to the experiment in a way no other pixie could. He endured the excruciating trial of iron ejection, forging an extraordinary metal called eternal steel. This metal, unmatched in strength, became the strongest in the known universe, and Twinkies mastered it, earning the title of the greatest iron craftsman in existence. A flashback reveals a younger Twinkies honing his abilities. A pixie mentor praises his remarkable level of control over eternal steel, calling it extraordinary. Twinkies, confident in his hard-earned mastery, respond that such results are only natural for someone who has endured the iron ejection trial. The Pixie people, now proud warriors, gain the ability to protect their kings thanks to this powerful tradition. However, behind Twinkies' back, whispers of doubt and speculation grow among the Pixies. Some question whether Twinkies ever underwent the trial. Rumors spread that the king may have taken eternal steel from another and gifted it to Twinkies. Many Pixies feel this is unfair as they risk their lives for their own eternal steel. One even remarks bitterly that perhaps they should be reborn as a prince to receive such privileges. Twinkies overhears these conversations and rushes to his room, deeply troubled. Reflecting on what he heard, he recalls that the metal formed after growth is supposed to be identical to the metal from the trial. Yet, when he checks the eternal steel stored in his cupboard, he finds it to be of shockingly low quality. Comparing his samples, he realizes the composition is completely different. He begins to question whose eternal steel he's been using all this time. A few days later, while searching through his room, Twinkies discovers a family photo belonging to his trusted aide. Something about the image makes him investigate further, and he eventually uncovers the truth behind his eternal steel. The aide approaches Twinkies unknowingly, but Twinkies, overwhelmed by emotion, lashes out with the eternal steel, attacking him in a fit of confusion. The moment the attack lands, Twinkies freezes, horrified by what he has done. The aide, gravely injured, reassures Twinkies, saying he knows Twinkies did not recognize him and never intended to harm him. Twinkies insists on calling for help, but the aide stops him, saying there is something important he must share. Holding Twinkies' hand firmly, the aide reveals the truth. His grandson died from side effects shortly after the iron ejection trial. Around the same time, the king, a lifelong friend, approached him. The aide handed over his grandson's eternal steel to the king, knowing it might one day save their civilization. The aide tells Twinkies that no matter the origin of the eternal steel, Twinkies' ability to wield it is the result of his own hard work and dedication. He expresses his belief that Twinkies will become the savior of their people. Moments later, despite Twinkies' efforts to call for help, the aide succumbs to his injuries and passes away. Twinkies reflects on the promise he made to himself on the day his aide passed away. He vowed to use the eternal steel to raise his civilization to heights greater than any other. Driven by that purpose, he dedicated his life to perfecting his control and strength, believing it was his destiny to lead his people to greatness. In the present, Leviathan announces something shocking. Jinwol is moving. The crowd gasps, and Twinkies, standing amidst the metal wreckage, stares in disbelief. He finds it impossible to comprehend. By his calculation, even as a third-level civilization, he is nearing the limits of his Cosmoforce reserves. Yet, this Earthling from a first-level civilization still has energy left to continue fighting. Jinwol rises slowly, his body fully regenerated. His wounds are gone, as if they were never there. Standing tall, he fixes his gaze on Twinkies and lets out an evil grin. Leviathan wonders aloud if there is truly no end to Jinwol's resilience. He reflects on how long the Earthling can keep recovering, defying the limits of logic and endurance. Twinkies, visibly frustrated, sighs before raising his hand for another attack. He crafts a sharp metal cone with his powers and launches it toward Jinwol, cursing him to meet his end. However, Jinwol rushes toward Twinkies with movements that seem entirely different from before. Twinkies immediately notices this change and begins to reassess his opponent. Leviathan remarks on the incredible speed of Jinwol's approach, impressed by how swiftly he is closing the distance. Ackerman, observing as well, admits it is impressive but doubts it will matter. She reminds those around her that the Pixian's skin is tougher than most metals, making them nearly impervious to conventional attacks. Jinwol's attack connects with Twinkie's right cheek, and to everyone's shock, blood splashes from the impact. Twinkie, stunned but quick to recover, counters with a massive spear of metal that crushes Jinwol's left side. However, this time, Jinwol retaliates almost instantly, sending Twinkies flying with a powerful punch. While Twinkies is still in midair, Jinwol follows up with a brutal kick to his gut, forcing Twinkies to crash into the ground. Twinkies, reeling from the sudden onslaught, reflects on the fight so far. He realizes that Jinwol has been hiding his true strength all along, catching him completely off guard. Meanwhile, Jinwol, now in full control of his movements, acknowledges that something has shifted within him. He feels his flow has returned and decides it is time to end the fight. With determination, Jinwol's fists begin to glow with a golden aura. He launches a flurry of powerful strikes at Twinkies, each blow creating massive explosions that shake the arena. Leviathan, watching in amazement, comments on the sheer destructive force of Jinwol's attacks. He begins to wonder if this Earthling has more than just regenerative powers, as his strength seems to be increasing exponentially. From an inside hall, Lena shouts in excitement, cheering for Jinwol with all her might. She knew she could count on him, and her voice echoes with pride. However, the robot accompanying her scolds her, ordering her to stay quiet and out of the fight. Even the small pixie, previously confident, now looks on in shock and worried for his prince. Ackerman observes the fight with newfound curiosity, commenting that Jinwol's hidden power changes everything. She explains that while Pixian strength lies in their brute power and unmatched defense, it lacked the reflexes to block such swift and precise attacks as Jinwol's. Meanwhile, Twinkies, struggling under the onslaught, narrowly manages to construct a metal shield to survive Jinwol's latest attack. Jinwol takes a step back, reflecting on the incredible toughness of his opponent. However, his thoughts are interrupted when a sharp metal cone pierces through his body. Twinkies taunts him, mocking Jinwol's arrogance and reminding him that no matter how many times he rises, he will never be able to pierce the eternal steel. Just then, Jinwol retaliates, grabbing Twinkies by the face and slamming it against the metal. The crowd gasps as cracks form on Twinkies' precious eternal steel. Twinkies, in disbelief, questions how a mere earthling could possibly damage this sacred metal. At that moment, the small pixie in the audience shouts in alarm, warning Twinkies that Jinwol can manipulate metal too. Twinkies freezes in shock, unable to comprehend how a first-level earthling could wield more than one type of cosmic force. His confusion grows as golden lines, similar to those of the pixies, begin to appear on Jinwol's face and wrists. Using his newfound ability, Jinwol manipulates the surrounding metal to create a rod and charges at Twinkies with it. Twinkies' outrage curses Jinwol for daring to touch the eternal steel, promising vengeance for the insult. His anger drives him to the brink as he goes berserk, pulling metal from all around him. The metal forms an enormous suit of armor, wrapping around Twinkies' body with a deafening roar. The arena trembles as the metallic monstrosity takes shape, displaying the full power of Pixian mastery. Jinwol, unfazed by the intimidating display, laughs and comments on the armor. Despite his injuries, he charges with all his might, launching attack after attack at Twinkies. However, the armor proves impenetrable, deflecting every strike. In his desperation, Jinwol pushes himself to his limits but ultimately suffers serious injuries from the effort. Panting and bleeding, Jinwol curses himself for his inability to wrest control of the metal from Twinkies. He realizes that the armor's strength lies not just in its composition, but in Twinkies' unmatched skill in controlling it. Leviathan watches in astonishment as Jinwol, in a bold and unexpected move, rips off his own head and hurls it away. The crowd gasps in disbelief at the spectacle. Leviathan remarks on the audacity of this escape attempt, noting how Jinwol's extreme regenerative abilities allow him to survive such a drastic action. As Jinwol regenerates, he takes a moment to reflect on his next move. Suddenly, a memory from 3,000 years ago surfaces. As a child, he had faced the legendary invincible Iron King, the owner of the Xuanwu armor, one of the 7 great treasures of the martial world. On that day, the Iron King had nearly ended his life, but a master had intervened, defeating the Iron King in a single devastating strike. Jinwol recalls how he later learned that very technique from the master who saved him. Now, facing Twinkies in his seemingly invincible eternal steel armor, Jinwol realizes what he must do. With renewed determination, he focuses his energy and prepares for the ultimate attack. Jinwol's eyes turn red as he channels his power and charges toward Twinkies. The air grows heavy with tension as he launches the legendary True Energy Shattering Fist. The sheer force of the technique pierces through Twinkies' metallic armor, shattering its defenses. The arena falls silent as everyone processes what just happened. Twinkies, stunned, tries to laugh off the attack, claiming that it's impossible for anyone to pierce eternal steel. But before he can finish, blood begins to drip from his mouth. Realization dawns on him as he senses his armor has been compromised. Moments later, blood splashes from within the armor, marking the end of Twinkies. The Pixian prince falls defeated as the crowd watches in stunned silence. Standing victorious, Jinwol reflects on the outcome. He acknowledges the extraordinary nature of eternal steel, but reminds himself and everyone watching of an important truth. No matter how extraordinary a weapon may be, it is not the weapon itself that decides the battle, but the one who wields it. A robot rolls into the arena, its mechanical eyes scanning Twinkies' lifeless form. It calmly confirms what everyone already knows: Twinkies is dead and done. Leviathan steps forward, his voice booming across the silent crowd as he announces the verdict. Twinkies is officially unable to continue and the match is over. Dispatch ends here. The little pixie in the audience remains frozen, her tiny face a mask of disbelief. She clearly can't process what just happened. Panon, on the other hand, is buzzing with excitement. He nudges Grog, his tone practically screaming if he has seen that that's the power of a Tier 1 nation. Grog, unimpressed as always, shrugs and fires back. If it were that other guy from earlier, he'd have died ages ago. Meanwhile, down a dimly lit hallway, Ackerman, the alien journalist, walks with a thoughtful expression. She mutters to herself, pondering the spectacle she just witnessed. It has been roughly 15 billion years since the universe's birth, and with infinite cosmo force swirling around, she had thought all possible outcomes had already been seen. Yet here comes this Earthling, throwing all her assumptions out the window. She wonders why there's no data on Jinwol's strange abilities. Even with her civilization's vast information networks, nothing about him makes sense. Could it be a new power, or has someone deliberately hidden the truth? A sly smile creeps onto her face as she chuckles. This Earthling is proving far more interesting than she expected. Back in the arena, Leviathan raises his voice again, declaring the winner of preliminary round 8, Earth's representative, Jinwol. The crowd erupts. In the Earth team's corner, Claris quietly reflects on the match. He recalls how team leader Lena had anticipated this outcome, marveling at how someone as extraordinary as Jinwol could emerge from their ranks. In this moment, he realizes they might be witnessing an event that will be remembered throughout history. Jinwol shows no sign of slowing down. He continues to channel the cosmic force of the Pixies as he pulls his sword out of Twinkies' lifeless body. For a moment, he appears lost in thought, as if considering his next move. Leviathan, ever the announcer, begins recapping the tournament. He highlights how representatives from 3 Tier 1 civilizations have managed to defeat so many lower-tier civilizations. However, before he can finish his sentence, Jinwol interrupts in the most dramatic way possible. Without warning, he charges straight at Leviathan, sword raised. His voice booms across the arena as he shouts at Leviathan, saying that strange energy of his has been bothering him since earlier. It seems Jinwol thinks Leviathan is the one who stands at the zenith of this world. With all his might, Jinwol unleashes a powerful attack. His blade arcs through the air, glowing with a white smoke slash that had torn through countless opponents before. But before the attack can land, Leviathan raises a single hand as if swatting away a minor inconvenience. A strange acidic mist surrounds Jinwol, dissolving everything in its path. Within moments, Jinwol collapses behind Leviathan, reduced to nothing more than a skeleton. So much for the mighty warrior. The entire audience sits in stunned silence. Claris watches in disbelief, his face frozen in shock. The seemingly invincible Jinwol has been turned into a pile of bones in mere seconds. Leviathan, thoroughly entertained by his own power, laughs loudly and casually announces that the match officially ends in a draw. He then turns to one of his assistants and tells them to deal with the mess. It's clear Leviathan has moved on to more important matters like his viewership stats. A robot approaches Leviathan and reports some surprising news. The match has just hit the #1 spot in viewership for its time slot. Leviathan, who was already feeling smug, pauses in disbelief. The robot continues, explaining that over 800 billion people watch the match live, and it has ranked as the highest viewed broadcast in all 5 regions hosting matches. Leviathan's laughter becomes manic as he processes the information. He asks for confirmation, still unable to believe it. The robot confirms again, adding that it has been 900 years since any match achieved such numbers. Leviathan, completely full of himself at this point, raises his arms in triumph. He declares to the universe that, of course, he could never be less popular than those other broadcasters. For Leviathan, popularity is clearly the only thing that matters, and his victory in the ratings has him on top of the world, or at least his ego is. Leviathan notices one of his assistants dragging Jinwol's barely alive skeleton into a trash bag, sweeping him up like yesterday's leftovers. He immediately orders the assistant to stop and demands an explanation. The assistant, clearly nervous, stammers that he's just doing what Leviathan told him, getting rid of this thing. Leviathan's tone shifts to something unusually serious. He sternly reminds the assistant that this thing is their star player. If the assistant has no respect for the star of the show, what does that say about him? The assistant freezes, probably rethinking every career choice that led him here. Leviathan, still holding his usual air of superiority, starts considering who should take care of Jinwol. It makes sense to entrust him to someone from his own civilization. After all, who else would want to deal with this mess? Meanwhile, in another part of the building, Lena is busy with a robot who won't stop yelling at her. The robot scolds her for breaking an insanely expensive piece of glass, pointing out that even if her entire civilization pooled their resources, they couldn't pay for the damage. Lena, however, barely listens. She's too preoccupied, reflecting on the match. From what she saw earlier, it seemed like Jinwol was dominating, which surprises her since she's heard Twinkies is one of the strongest powerhouses around. The robot grows more furious, snapping at Lena and demanding if she's even listening. She waves him off with a dismissive reply, acknowledging Twinkies' strength, but clearly not invested in the lecture. This only makes the robot angrier, accusing her of ignoring him completely. At that moment, another robot arrives and interrupts the argument. It tells Lena to follow, explaining that Leviathan has summoned her to pick up her representative. Lena looks confused for a moment, but quickly pieces it together. Her expression changes, and she curses under her breath, realizing that Jinwol must have done something outrageous again. She storms off toward the arena, her frustration evident. The first robot shouts after her, reminding her that she's still responsible for paying for broken glass. Lena doesn't even turn around. She's too busy rushing to find out what kind of mess her primitive teammate has caused this time. The robot leads Lena to Leviathan, who stands there looking as smug as ever. Leviathan informs her there's nothing urgent, just that her representative seems incapable of returning on his own. With an air of exaggerated nonchalance, he points to a ball-like structure. Inside, what remains of Jinwol has been crammed together, barely resembling anything human. Leviathan assures her that even though it looks bad, they performed some first aid. It is probably the bare minimum effort, but Leviathan says it like he's done her a favor. Lena reluctantly takes the ball containing her mangled teammate. Leviathan casually mentions that if she carries him to the recovery room, he'll eventually be fine. Clearly, Leviathan has washed his hands of the matter and expects her to deal with the mess. Later, Jinwol wakes up in a room, lying on a bed. His body aches, but he's alive. He notices Lena sitting nearby, slumped in a chair. She stirs, opening her eyes slightly, and mutters something about how surprising it is that he actually survived. She marvels at his strange ability, even suggesting it made the effort to attach the suppressor worth it. Her tone is more amused than concerned. Jinwol, still groggy, demands answers. He asks why Lena is here and what all the strange devices on him are about. He's particularly annoyed by the handcuffs and the odd neck cuff he's wearing. Lena waves off his questions, telling him to calm down and explaining that these are recovery devices. She says it so nonchalantly, as if restraining someone like him is completely normal. Her response only fuels his anger. Jinwol bristles at the implication that anyone dared to help him. Lena, unfazed, reminds him that as an Earthling from the weakest civilization in the universe, he's not exactly in a position to complain. She points to the neck cuff and informs him it's called the suppressor. As long as he wears it, he's no different from any other powerless Earthling. Her tone is almost mocking, as if to remind him where he stands in the grand cosmic hierarchy. Jinwol tries to dismiss her words as nonsense. He starts to break free of the restraints, declaring his intention to prove her wrong. But no matter how hard he struggles, the devices hold firm. Lena watches with a smug grin, commenting on how he can't even escape on his own. Her tone carries just enough sarcasm to kneel him further. Frustrated, Jinwol sighs and stops struggling. Instead, he tries to sense his mana, hoping to figure out what's wrong. Just as he focuses, he realizes something strange. His blood flow feels normal, but there's no energy, nothing coursing through him. Confusion clouds his mind as he reflects on what could possibly be happening to him. Lena smirks as she asks Jinwol how it feels to experience the GSP tournament firsthand. Her tone carries a mix of curiosity and mischief. Jinwol opens one eye, visibly confused, and demands clarification. Lena calmly explains that he just participated as Earth's representative in the fighting tournament. Jinwol stiffens and mutters something under his breath, clearly dreading her next words. Lena confirms his worst fear. adding that the arena where he fought that metal guy is the tournament stage. She presses further, teasingly asking if the fight fired him up enough to want to challenge more opponents. She even offers to remove all the restraining devices right away if he agrees to participate again. Annoyed, Jinwol cuts her off and demands she stop talking and release him immediately. Lena, unimpressed by his outburst, internally notes that threats like this don't work on him at all. She sighs and concludes she has no choice but to use a more extreme method. She pulls out a remote and presses a button, releasing his restraints. She starts to explain the conditions, but before she can finish, Jinwol lunges at her. He grabs her by the neck, lifting her effortlessly, and growls that unless she wants to be torn apart, she better remove the suppressor around his neck too. At that moment, Marcel appears, limping slightly and leaning on his stick, a reminder of his earlier battle with Twinkies. He's clearly in no rush to help Lena. Instead, he comments on the scene in front of him, casually wondering if this is some kind of lover's quarrel. His amused tone only makes the situation more absurd. Jinwol, irritated, drops Lena and demands an explanation about Marcel's presence. Lena, unfazed by nearly being strangled, informs Jinwol that the suppressor is not something he can remove by brute force. Her tone carries an edge of mockery as she proposes a simple bet. If Jinwol can defeat Marcel in a match, she promises to remove the suppressor immediately and leave him alone for good. However, if Jinwol loses, he will have to take Marcel's place and participate in the remaining preliminary matches. An hour later, Jinwol sits with Lena at an alien dining table, devouring alien food like a wild beast. His appetite is bottomless, and his table manners non-existent. Between mouthfuls, he grumbles at Lena, asking when they're going to fight. He's desperate to get rid of the cursed restraint around his neck. Lena, unfazed by his impatience, reminds him that they're here because he wouldn't stop complaining about being hungry. Jinwol pauses for a moment, clutching his stomach. He admits that he feels like he's about to burst, and then asks if this kind of hunger is normal for them. Lena raises an eyebrow and remarks that he's acting as if it is his first time feeling hunger. Still stuffing food into his mouth at an alarming speed, Jinwol replies that it is not his first time, but it's been so long that he barely remembers the feeling. Lena, curious, asks if people in the past didn't eat. Jinwol shrugs and clarifies that not everyone was like that, but at least the people from his time were stronger than the weaklings of this future. Lena doesn't take kindly to his remark. She scoffs and challenges him, saying they'll see if he still calls them weak after he fights Marcel later. Jinwol, unimpressed, points toward Marcel, who is silently eating across the table, and sarcastically asks if she means that guy. Lena, growing irritated, yells at Marcel, demanding he say something instead of just quietly eating. Marcel finally responds, his tone calm but laced with sarcasm. He mentions that he holds over 40 black belts in martial arts and has undergone rigorous military training in lethal techniques. Sure, he may have lost a limb or two, but his skills remain unmatched. Jinwol barely listens, waving a dismissive hand and stating that the outcome won't change, limbs or no limbs. This casual insult makes Marcel snap. He stands up, visibly furious, and hurls a string of curses at Jinwol. Jinwol leans back, calm as ever, and claims he's just stating facts. He suggests Marcel save everyone's time and admit defeat already. Marcel, clearly not over his earlier loss, starts to simmer. He mutters something about Jinwol being the reason he lost his limbs, throwing in vague mentions of revenge. Jinwol doesn't flinch. Instead, he accuses Marcel of blaming his own weakness on others and casually calls him a coward. Marcel's face turns red as he demands an explanation, refusing to let the insult slide. He challenges Jinwol, daring him to repeat it. Before things escalate further, Lena steps in. She looks at both of them like they're squabbling kids and declares that since they're both full now, it's time to settle this once and for all. The trio heads to the basement of the 80th floor GSP practice arena. Once they arrive, Lena points out the empty space and announces that they can fight here without interruptions. Jinwol scoffs, rumbling that they could have handled this back at the restaurant instead of wasting time. Lena shuts him down, reminding him that the future isn't like the violent era he came from. Here, fights can't just break out anywhere. Jinwol rolls his eyes and mutters that the future seems to be full of cowards. His words are loud enough for everyone to hear, but Lena doesn't even bother responding. Walking slightly behind Lena, Marcel leans in close to her. He hesitates before quietly voicing his concerns. He reminds her that they're supposed to be cooperating for Earth's sake, but this setup feels off. He admits he got a little too emotional earlier, but he's starting to think this fight isn't a good idea. Jinwol, after all, beat Twinkies, even with the suppressor around his neck. Marcel openly doubts he can handle someone like Jinwol in his current state. Lena, unfazed by his worries, assures him that there's nothing to stress about. She coolly mentions that everything has already been prepared. Marcel looks at her, unconvinced, doesn't argue further. Jinwol stands impatiently in the middle of the arena, glancing back at Lena and Marcel. His expression is one of mild irritation. Lena waves at him and tells him to hold on, explaining that they need to set up a few things. Jinwol smirks and remarks that at least they didn't propose a fight without a plan. He then throws a taunt in Marcel's direction, pointing out that the guy next to her looks a bit scared and asking if he's going to be okay. Lena ignores the jab and pulls out a sleek, futuristic case. She opens it, revealing something that catches Marcel's attention immediately. She hands him his new gear and Marcel stares at it in disbelief. He asks what it is, and Lena casually explains that it is his new leg. She tells him to try it on, mentioning it might feel uncomfortable at first but will adjust to his body automatically. Marcel hesitates, but curiosity gets the better of him. He attaches the leg and takes a cautious step. His eyes widen as he realizes what he's using. He exclaims in shock, recognizing it as an artificial leg from the high-tech planet Artinos. Lena smiles, impressed by his knowledge, and confirms his guess. Marcel, still amazed, asks how she managed to get her hands on something so expensive. Lena shrugs and casually explains that she dipped into her savings and got a bit of help from the team. Elsewhere on the same planet, Mark stares at his dwindling account balance. Confused and frustrated, he wonders where all his money has disappeared to. Back at the arena, Lena sighs and mentions that buying an arm to match the leg was a bit out of budget. Marcel's face contorts into a mix of gratitude and disbelief as he thanks her, promising to do his best in the upcoming fight, even if it cost him his life. Lena, clearly unimpressed by the drama, tells him not to take it that far. Still waiting, Jinwol shouts at them from the middle of the arena, demanding to know if they're done yet. His patience is wearing thin, and he's eager to get rid of the suppressor around his neck. Marcel calls back, telling him to wait, and then strides toward the center of the practice arena. The new leg works perfectly, and Marcel's confidence seems to grow with every step. Before he reaches Jinwol, Lena calls out to him. She says there's something important she needs to tell him before the fight begins. Jinwol interrupts with a smirk, scoffing at the so-called preparation. He sarcastically remarks that he expected something amazing, only to find they were hyping up a toy leg. Marcel glares at him and snaps back, defending the prosthetic as something far beyond Jinwol's understanding. Lena chimes in, backing Marcel up and warning Jinwol not to get too cocky. Jinwol's grin widens and his demeanor shifts. His eyes glow red as he takes a fighting stance, exuding confidence. He dismisses their warnings, claiming arrogance doesn't lie with him, it's with them. Without another word, he launches himself at Marcel, ready to strike. But something unexpected happens. The speed of Jinwol seems off. His movements, usually precise and deadly, are sluggish. Marcel sidesteps the attack with ease, barely breaking a sweat. Jinwol, undeterred, tries again, but Marcel dodges effortlessly. This time, Marcel retaliates. Using the prosthetic leg, he delivers a powerful back kick straight to Jinwol's face. The impact sends Jinwol flying through the air before he crashes onto the ground. For a moment, the arena falls silent. Marcel chuckles, clearly satisfied. He reflects on how perfectly the leg worked, just as Lena had said it would. And as he watches Jinwol struggling to recover, Marcel recalls the words Lena shared with him earlier, her confidence in the plan now making complete sense. Earlier, Marcel had expressed his doubts to Lena. He asked if she was really telling him not to be afraid of facing Jinwol after seeing his last match. Lena reassured him with complete confidence, telling him that if he just fights like he normally would, winning will be a breeze. Marcel, still skeptical, promised to do his best but questioned her confidence. He started to point out how their opponent was clearly dangerous, but Lena cut him off before he could finish. She told him not to worry and began explaining. Lena revealed that Jinwol's physical abilities are currently worse than those of an average person. Marcel, clearly surprised, asked how that could be. Lena went on to explain that the suppressor Jinwol is wearing wasn't designed for lower-tier civilizations like theirs. Most systems within the Galactic Federation, including the temporary registration system, are built with upper-tier civilizations in mind. To put it bluntly, she said, it's like giving an elephant tranquilizer to a mouse. She added that Jinwol isn't aware of the suppressor's full effects because he hasn't been using martial arts yet. However, once the fight begins and he tries to exert more force, the suppressor will respond aggressively, keeping his abilities in check. Marcel listened carefully, but he still had reservations. He pointed out that suppressors are usually used for second-tier civilizations. He asked how Lena could know so much about their effects on someone from a first-tier civilization. Lena paused for a moment, her tone shifting. She remarked that it had been 20 years, a long time. She explained that in the past, the Galactic Federation turned a blind eye to the horrors of cosmic trafficking organizations. While she had been in hiding during those dark times, she managed to gather a wealth of information. With a sharp edge in her voice, she declared that knowledge itself is a powerful weapon. Now that someone like her, who wields this weapon, has emerged, she warned that the alien bastards better watch out. In the present, Marcel drives his knee into Jinwol again, sending him flying across the arena for a second time. Jinwol crashes to the ground, growing in frustration. As he struggles to push himself up to his knees, he curses Marcel and mutters bitterly that things would be different if it weren't for the cursed necklace around his neck. Lena, standing at the edge of the arena, shouts at Marcel, telling him to wrap things up because she needs to leave soon. Marcel hesitates and asks her if this kind of training will really help in the next match. He points out that, like Jinwol just said, if it weren't for the suppressor, someone like him wouldn't stand a chance. Before Marcel can finish his thought, Lena interrupts him with a sharp question. She asks what he thinks is the fundamental difference between higher civilizations and lower-tier ones like theirs. Marcel thinks for a moment and guesses that it's the ability to use cosmo force. Lena nods, acknowledging he's not wrong, but explains there's more to it. She goes on to say that, when looking at the bigger picture, the real difference is the potential to grow by breaking through the limits of common sense and physical boundaries. For Tier 1 humans, things like fire erupting from their bodies or creating weapons out of thin air are impossible feats, concepts that defy logic. But for higher civilizations, such abilities are as natural as breathing. If humanity ever advances to a higher level, what seems impossible now, like flying through the sky unaided or growing multiple limbs, might one day become possible. Lena emphasizes that this potential is tied to the amount of knowledge each civilization has access to, knowledge that corresponds to their rank in the Galactic Federation. Higher civilizations have an incomparably vast reservoir of information, and the true power of knowledge lies in how it's used. Without making the effort to learn, people won't even realize their own weaknesses, let alone address them. And in a situation like this, ignorance could mean losing everything. Lena continues her explanation, pointing out a critical issue with Jinwol's situation. Since his first match gained so much attention, it is highly likely that every detail of his fighting style has already been analyzed. Techniques like dodging or defending, which might seem natural to him, are now supplementary and predictable. She adds that his fighting style resembles that of aliens with regenerative abilities more than it does of humans. This similarity could easily become a fatal weakness in the next match. Marcel listens intently but can't help feeling a bit thrown off. He jokes that the way Lena talks, it sounds like she considers Jinwol an alien rather than a human. Pointing at Jinwol, he asks if he's really human. Lena brushes off his concerns, saying there's no need to overthink it. She assures him that Jinwol is genetically 100% human. She even double-checked when she had the chance just to be absolutely certain. Still skeptical, Marcel asks why there hasn't been any noticeable change in them as a civilization, even though they've made it past the first preliminary round. Lena calmly explains that such changes don't happen instantly. They occur gradually over time, so he doesn't need to worry. She then lays out the principles of civilization advancement, breaking it down step by step. Number 1, the representative of a civilization ascends to the next level of being after winning a match. Number 2, other members of the species do not immediately advance alongside the representative. And number 3, as long as the civilization's representative maintains their ranking, the civilization itself will gradually advance. She clarifies that the more Earth's representative wins, the closer humanity gets to understanding and interpreting laws beyond current Earth science. This could lead to breakthroughs such as the development of a miracle drug to save humanity or other advancements that seem impossible now. Finally, Lena emphasizes that the purpose of this training is to strengthen Jinwol's abilities under various constraints. By pushing him to adapt, they are not only ensuring his survival, but also maximizing the chances of Earth's progression through this tournament. Just then, a voice cuts through their conversation, commenting that something seems strange. Both Lena and Marcel turn their heads to see Lady Ackerman standing nearby. She greets them with a casual smile, introducing herself as nothing more than an ordinary space journalist. Lena narrows her eyes and immediately asks if Ackerman is an Inforian. Marcel, confused, asks Lena what that means. Lena explains that Inforians are those unsettling beings who can peek into people's minds using a pen-like tool, exactly like the one Ackerman is holding in her hand. Ackerman chuckles, clearly amused that Lena knows so much about her. Lena doesn't waste time and fires back with a question of her own, asking what Ackerman meant by strange after showing up out of nowhere. Ackerman responds calmly, pointing out that Lena's earlier explanation about Jinwol was strange. She elaborates, suggesting that Earth's limits are already beyond those of a Tier 1 civilization. In fact, Jinwol's abilities seem closer to those of a Tier 3 civilization. Ackerman proposes a theory. explaining that if Lena's explanation were correct, there should have been a noticeable change in Earth's status the moment Jinwol was registered as their representative. Yet there's been no sign of that. She hints that perhaps Jinwol isn't entirely a part of their civilization at all. Maybe he's something separate. Without waiting for a response, Ackerman steps forward, walking toward the unconscious Jinwol. She pulls out a mysterious device, holding it over him, and suggests that with this, she can confirm his identity. She claims she could uncover a secret so profound that even science hasn't managed to explain it. Before she can proceed, Marcel steps between her and Jinwol, shielding his teammate. He tells Ackerman to step back, his voice firm. He makes it clear that they can't trust her. Ackerman reflects silently, considering whether she should lure Jinwol to a place where the suppressor could be removed and deal with him there. However, she quickly rebukes herself, deciding against causing unnecessary commotion. There's no rush, she reasons, they have plenty of time. She changes her approach, saying she understands why they wouldn't trust an alien they just met. Still, she offers to reveal Jinwol's true identity if they ever want her help. With that, she starts to walk away. And as she leaves, Ackerman suddenly stops and turns her head back toward them. For the first time, she lifts her gaze and remarks that she's curious about Jinwol too. Her voice carries an odd tone, somewhere between intrigue and amusement. She walks away laughing, leaving behind an air of mystery. Marcel breaks the silence, asking Lena what she thinks about Ackerman. Lena shrugs, dismissing Ackerman's words as mere curiosity. She suggests that Ackerman is likely just spouting nonsense because Jinwol intrigues her. Lena reminds Marcel that regardless of what Ackerman said, they don't have any other options. Their only task is to bet everything on their last remaining hope and ensure Jinwol wins the next match. That's all that matters now. 15 days later, the GSP tournament arena buzzes with excitement. Leviathan steps forward, his voice booming as he announces the start of the second preliminary round for Group 8. He introduces the first contestant, a representative of the Tier 2 transfer civilization Burkin. Leviathan elaborates on Burkin's impressive credentials, ranked 5,830th among civilizations, a player who passed the first round in record time, and a being with a rare ability to control their own cosmic energy. Burkin is described as a guardian deity who receives energy from 400,000 of their kind to protect their planet. The crowd watches in awe, their murmurs filling the arena. All eyes are on Burkin, whose enormous inhibitors barely contain the sheer power radiating from him. As the suppressors break apart with a deafening roar, Burkin lets out a feral cry that shakes the arena. The announcer declares with excitement that a beast with immense power has finally been unleashed into the arena. Meanwhile, Lena stands in the observation area with Mark by her side, both focused on Burkin. Mark comments that it's not every day they get to see something this intense. Lena, unbothered, tells him not to worry and cryptically adds that their side will be just as eye-catching. Mark, puzzled, asks her what she means, but Lena only smiles and tells him to wait and see. Leviathan's voice booms again, shifting the focus to Burkin's opponent. He announces the arrival of a representative from the lowest-ranked Tier 1 civilization, a player who accomplished the impossible by defeating Twinkies, the universe's greatest metal controller. As the crowd holds its breath, Jinwol steps into the arena, but his appearance leaves everyone stunned. He's carrying a stick, his other arm wrapped in layers of bandages. He looks like he just crawled out of a war zone. Leviathan, watching from his platform, exclaims in disbelief, questioning why Jinwol is in such a state. Mark turns to Lena, horrified, and demands to know how she could let their representative appear like this. Lena, completely unfazed, calmly reminds Mark that she told him their side would draw attention too. Mark, still in disbelief, argues that this is beyond reckless. Lena waves him off, confidently stating that this level of injury is nothing for someone like Jinwol. As if on cue, the suppressors around Jinwol begin to break apart. The announcer, now even more animated, announces that Jinwol's inhibitors are being released. The crowd erupts with mixed reactions, some in awe, others in confusion over his battered appearance. Marcel, standing beside Lena and Mark, cheers enthusiastically for Jinwol, shouting words of encouragement. He reminds Jinwol to show the results of his hard training. His optimism is almost infectious, but Jinwol clearly doesn't share the sentiment. In the arena, Jinwol clenches his fists, furious. He grabs his own head in frustration and mutters curses aimed at his own teammates. He ceases, vowing to kill those who dare to humiliate him like this. However, after a deep breath, he growls that a promise is a promise. First, he'll deal with the so-called monster in front of him. Then he'll settle the score with the bastards responsible for his current state. Leviathan announces the start of the second round of the preliminaries, a group match. Jinwol looks down at his hand, irritation flashing across his face. His energy has returned, but something is off. The flow is completely twisted, just like before. His martial arts are useless in this state. If things go the same way as last time, he'll just have to wait until his energy flow recovers. That or figure something else out before this turns into an even bigger disaster. Suddenly, loud cheers break through his thoughts. His head lifts as the chanting grows stronger. The crowd isn't cheering for him. They roar Burkin's name, voices full of admiration. The word Guerrillian echoes across the stands over and over. Jinwol stares at them, confused. Their excitement only increases. They call Burkin their hero, the one who once protected them from monsters. Their guardian, their savior. His expression twists, pure disbelief written all over his face. The chants grow louder, almost deafening now. Of all things, they're expecting Burkin to save their planet. Jinwol stands there, watching this ridiculous display and wonders what kind of nonsense he just walked into. Leviathan comments on the overwhelming cheers from Burkin's supporters. The entire stadium shakes with their excitement, but despite all the noise, Burkin hasn't actually done anything yet. Mark, sitting with the Earth team, glances at Lena. He brings up Burkin's titles, the warrior with the power of 1 billion, the planetary guardian, the so-called deity of protection. The names sound impressive, almost too much. Lena barely reacts and brushes it off the casual remark. It's no different from how people exaggerate when calling someone the strongest man on Earth like Marcel. Mark takes a second to process that comparison and then nods as if it all makes sense now. Lena, however, isn't as relaxed as she seems. She knows Burkin is far from weak. His title isn't just for show. Deep down, she hopes things don't take a turn for the worse. Meanwhile, one of Burkin's companions, Callian, decides that the best way to show support is to be as obnoxious as possible. He takes a deep breath, then blasts a deafening roar through a massive golden trumpet, calling for Burkin to deliver divine punishment. The entire stadium reacts instantly. The crowd covers their ears, wincing in pain. The sound is so ridiculously loud that even Lena jams her fingers into her ears, immediately realizing what it means. The fight is about to begin. Jinwol rubs one of his ears, already annoyed. The noise is so intense that he actually wonders if his eardrums are about to give up on him. His gaze shifts toward Burkin, and something feels off. Up until now, Burkin gave off no fighting spirit at all, almost like he wasn't even interested in this match. But in an instant, everything changes. The atmosphere around him shifts completely, and Jinwol senses something different, something dangerous. Burkin, the massive warrior, charges straight at Jinwol. Each step he takes shakes the ground, the sheer force of his movement making the entire arena tremble. In the blink of an eye, he closes the distance and stands right in front of his opponent. Without hesitation, he swings with a strike that holds the power of entire planets. The moment his attack lands, a whirlwind of raw energy surges through the arena, sending shockwaves in every direction. Leviathan's voice roars over the chaos, marveling at the sheer force of Burkin's strike. The entire arena shakes, proof of the devastating power contained within the so-called Guardian. Mark and Lena stare in disbelief. The force alone is enough to overwhelm anyone who isn't prepared for it. A transparent barrier shimmers into existence, absorbing the violent energy before it can cause real destruction. Leviathan quickly explains that the arena's powerful energy shield managed to contain the impact. The cheers of Burkin's supporters grow even louder, their voices thundering through the stadium. They chant his title, filled with absolute confidence in his victory. Leviathan, feeding off the hype, reminds the audience that Burkin's previous opponent had regenerative abilities too, but that match ended in just 3 seconds. The same devastating attack ended it before it even started. He then poses the big question, can Jinwol survive this time? Lena bites down on her thumb, barely able to contain her anxiety. She hopes desperately that this fight doesn't end the same way. Leviathan suddenly gasps, his excitement spiking again. The truth is revealed, Jinwol dodged the attack at the last second. The devastating blow barely grazed his left hand instead of landing a direct hit. Leviathan shouts in amazement. Somehow, Jinwol avoided a fatal strike by adjusting his trajectory at the perfect moment. The attack was designed to target the weaknesses of regenerative fighters, but Jinwol countered it by using an entirely different combat approach. The audience watches in shock, realizing that he isn't just enduring, he's adapting. Jinwol grips his injured arm, his expression darkening. The damage is worse than expected. The places Burkin's power touched aren't healing at all. Marcel watches Jinwol and claps, clearly pleased with what just happened. Lena, grinning, congratulates him, saying their plan worked. Mark, still struggling to process everything, looks at them in disbelief. He doesn't understand how dodging one attack is worth celebrating. It seems like a stretch, or maybe they've just completely lost their minds. Lena smirks, barely holding back her amusement. It makes perfect sense that Mark doesn't get it. After all, even they weren't sure this crazy plan would actually work. A flashback reveals the real story behind their confidence. Lena once asked Marcel for his opinion on Jinwol's condition. She wanted to know if he noticed anything unusual. Marcel had no doubts. It wasn't just a small change. Jinwol was getting faster even while being restrained by the suppressor. Despite being the one under restriction, he somehow made Marcel feel like his own life was at risk. As proof, he showed Lena a fresh wound, one that Jinwol had given him during training. That was all Lena needed to hear. She immediately made up her mind. 2 weeks would be enough. She told Marcel to keep pushing the training forward while she reported the findings to HQ. Marcel watched her walk away, confusion all over his face. He had no idea what was going through her head, but whatever it was, it probably wasn't anything normal. Turning to Jinwol, he decided to keep things simple. He didn't know what Lena was planning, but for now, all they had to do was keep training. Jinwol, never one to hold back his opinions, was far from impressed. He made it painfully clear that this entire thing was pointless. The idea that someone like Marcel could train him was beyond ridiculous. Marcel didn't argue. He knew exactly how pathetic he must look to Jinwol right now. Without the suppressor, his punches wouldn't even register as an inconvenience. His attacks were so slow that Jinwol never even needed to dodge them. But that was the trick. Even the softest drop of water can carve through stone if it drips long enough. Attacks, no matter how weak, would eventually land. And when that moment came, if Jinwol's regeneration wasn't working properly, one hit could change everything. Even someone as extraordinary as him wasn't invincible forever. Though Marcel admitted, luck that terrible didn't come around often. Back in the present, Jinwol grits his teeth, cursing under his breath. The realization stings. The last thing he ever wanted was to be helped like this. Marcel watches the battle unfold, a knowing look on his face. Someone as stubborn as Jinwol would never just sit down and listen to advice. There was no way he would accept traditional training like a normal person. That's why this whole setup was never about directly teaching him anything. Instead, it forced him to learn on his own. Marcel glances at Lena and asks if this is what she had planned all along. Lena confirms it without hesitation. After observing Jinwol for a while, she realized persuasion would never work on someone like him. His pride wouldn't allow it. Instead of trying to convince him, she put him in a situation where he had no choice but to figure it out himself. The key to surviving against Burkin was simple: avoid that devastating critical strike at all costs. Everything else came second. Meanwhile, sitting far from the Earth team, an alien news reporter analyzes the fight, muttering to himself. For a civilization ranked only at Tier 1, these Earthlings seem to understand regeneration weaknesses far better than expected. It suddenly makes sense why they trained in that old arena, where the suppressor couldn't be removed. They were fixing the biggest flaw of fighters with regeneration: their dependence on it. Normally, people saw near immortality as a strength, but these Earthlings had the rare insight to see it as a weakness. The reporter shifts his focus to the bigger picture. Unlike the first round, where luck played a major role, things change from the second match onward. Once the information on matches is made public, the abilities of the second-in-command start playing a much bigger role. Burkin's side, on the other hand, looks completely unprepared. Not surprising. For all their overwhelming power, they've remained stuck as a Tier 2 civilization for ages. He shakes his head, unimpressed. What a bunch of fools. Still, this outcome actually benefits him. If the Earthling wins, it works in his favor. But watching Jinwol take an easy victory wouldn't be any fun. He leans forward slightly, eyes narrowing. If this so-called strongest puppet in the universe wants to impress anyone, he better start pushing himself harder. Leviathan watches closely and comments on the fight. After exchanging their first attacks, the two fighters entered a long standoff, neither making the next move just yet. From the Earth team's stands, Lena calls out to Jinwol, her voice filled with urgency. She warns him not to let his guard down and demands that he dodge the next attack as well. Mark, watching with less concern, raises an eyebrow. To him, Lena seems a little too worked up. He doesn't see the big deal. Jinwol will just recover anyway, right? Lena immediately challenges that assumption, throwing a question back at him. Does he really think regeneration comes without weaknesses? She directs his attention to Jinwol's left arm, pointing out that it still hasn't healed. Mark stares, suddenly unsure. That doesn't make any sense. Transferians are only supposed to be able to manipulate their own energy, right? Lena confirms that's true. Their ability revolves around controlling their energy and transferring it to others. It's a support-type ability, not something typically useful in direct combat. But then why is Jinwol's arm still injured? Lena explains further. Every living being has a limit to how much energy they can absorb. Burkin takes advantage of this by forcing energy into his opponents far beyond what their bodies can handle, effectively destroying them from the inside. For Jinwol, this attack is particularly dangerous. The impact isn't just physical, it damages the energy-related organs in the attacked area, completely shutting down his ability to regenerate. Mark processes this new information and finally understands. It's not just brute force, it's a brutal, calculated attack designed to take down even someone with near immortality. But he raises another question. Wouldn't an attack like that drain a huge amount of energy from Burkin as well? Lena nods, admitting that's true. But Burkin's energy reserves are so vast that it barely matters. Even so, she knows there's a limit to everything. A technique that powerful must put some strain on Burkin's body. Using it continuously would be difficult, if not impossible. The first strike was aimed directly at Jinwol's greatest weakness, and they planned it perfectly. But from this point on, Burkin won't have the luxury of setting up another clean, prepared attack like that. In the stands, Burkin's supporters start losing their patience. Their frustration spills over, and all eyes turn to Kelly, Burkin's assistant. They demand that he stop standing around and do something. Their guardian is in battle, and he needs support. Anger flares in their voices as they accuse him of making Burkin's mighty power look weak. To them, this should have been an easy victory, not a drawn-out fight. Callian grits his teeth, feeling the pressure. Who do these fools think they are, ordering him around like that? That energy blast isn't some basic attack that can be thrown out endlessly. It's a carefully controlled skill that can only be used a few times per day. That's exactly why he spent so much time analyzing the opponent's combat style. He prepared for this exact moment, but none of that matters now. What matters is landing the next energy blast no matter what. Determined, he takes a deep breath and fills his lungs with air. Once again, he lifts the massive golden trumpet and shouts through it, his voice booming across the battlefield as he calls for Burkin to crush the enemy. Jinwol hears it and glances in Callian's direction, a hint of curiosity in his expression. Burkin, fueled by the overwhelming energy, leaps into the air. The sheer force of his jump shakes the ground, sending cracks through the surface. He hurtles toward Jinwol and swings with monstrous force. But Jinwol reacts instantly. Just before the attack lands, he dodges again, the ground shattering where he once stood. A realization clicks in his mind. The real problem isn't Burkin. It's that annoying kid blowing the trumpet. Burkin lunges again, stretching out his massive hands in another attempt to crush Jinwol. Jinwol watches him, unimpressed. No wonder this fool moves so clumsily in battle. His raw power is undeniable, but his actual fighting skills, a complete mess. Burkin slashes at him, but Jinwol is too fast. Dodging effortlessly, he jumps into the air, flipping over his opponent. Without wasting a second, he delivers a sharp kick straight to Burkin's face. The impact is brutal. Burkin crashes into the ground with a loud thud, the force sending blood splattering across the arena. Callian watches in stunned silence, completely unable to believe what just happened. Leviathan highlights the unexpected turn of events. Jinwol has not only defended himself against Burkin's relentless attacks, but has also managed to land a counterattack. Lena chuckles to herself, clearly enjoying the moment. With a playful smirk, she places a hand on Marcel's shoulder, teasing him that Jinwol must have been inspired after fighting him. Marcel, however, isn't buying it. The idea that someone like Jinwol took inspiration from him sounds like complete nonsense. He's faced him directly before, and if there's one thing he's sure about, it's that Jinwol isn't the type to learn from others so easily. Meanwhile, Callian is not handling the situation well. His expression twists in disbelief as he struggles to accept what he just witnessed. There's no way the Guardian could possibly lose to a rookie like this. His frustration boils over. His eyes burn red with anger as he grips the golden trumpet once more. This time, his voice is filled with raw desperation as he calls for Burkin to unleash divine punishment. Jinwol, watching Callian closely, scoffs. Does this guy really think that loudly announcing an attack is going to make it more effective? But before he can dwell on it further, Burkin releases another attack. The energy explodes forward and Jinwol barely evades it in time. His mind races. Something feels off. That last attack, something was different. His eyes narrow as he quickly scans the battlefield. Then it clicks. No way. Could it be that Callian actually noticed something? Even if he did, it's already too late. But Callian isn't done. Still fuming, he once again raises the trumpet and bellows another command, this time asking for total destruction. Jinwol's body tenses, his eyes widen as he realizes what's about to happen. Callian isn't just targeting him anymore. This attack is aimed at the entire arena. Burkin charges up, releasing another massive energy blast, one even larger than before. Leviathan roars over the chaos, announcing the terrifying reality. The entire battlefield is now covered by Burkin's attack. The question hangs heavy in the air. Will Jinwol survive this one? The audience collectively holds its breath, completely stunned by what they are witnessing. Seconds pass and the dust settles. Jinwol lies motionless on the ground, the left half of his body completely destroyed. His breath is shallow, his voice barely audible as he admits he never saw that coming. In the stands, Kallian is overwhelmed with excitement. Her face lights up, her voice filled with pure joy as she declares their victory. The supporters of Burkin erupt into celebration. Their cheers turn into full-blown dancing, their voices echoing across the arena. To them, this is undeniable proof. The Guardian is truly unbeatable. Meanwhile, Jinwol remains on the ground completely still. He looks like he has nothing left, no strength, no fight, nothing. Burkin slowly walks toward him. Kallian, unable to contain the excitement, shouts for Burkin to finish it. This is the perfect moment to end things once and for all. But then something strange happens. Kallian's excitement fades as confusion takes over. Something doesn't feel right. Her eyes lock onto Burkin, and a sense of unease creeps in. Burkin isn't attacking. Instead, he stands there, his hands stretched toward Jinwol. A soft blue aura radiates from his palm, flowing toward his fallen opponent. Kallian's heart pounds. This wasn't part of the plan. She never gave any orders for this. What is Burkin doing? And then Burkin's voice booms, shaking with something unexpected. Desperation. He orders Jinwol to stand up. Again and again, he demands it. He doesn't want to win. He doesn't want this fight to end like this. He wants Jinwol to get up and finish him off. Leviathan watches closely and announces that Jinwol still isn't moving. The tension in the arena grows with each passing second. Lena grits her teeth, frustration clear on her face. If this continues any longer, the match will be over. Without a second thought, she moves to jump over the barrier, ready to rush in. But before she can, Marcel and Mark grab her, holding her back. Meanwhile, Jinwol remains on the ground, breathing heavily. Suddenly, an image flashes in his mind. Burkin is showing him a memory. A group of Burkin's people stand around a massive glass chamber. Inside, a newborn Burkin floats, his small body glowing with a faint blue aura. His eyes are closed, an oxygen mask strapped over his nose. The scientists surrounding the chamber burst into celebration. Their experiment has worked. After countless efforts, they have finally created a being of legend, the Guardian. Their excitement fills the room. They marvel at the impossible, realizing they have successfully fused the energy of hundreds of thousands of people into this single creature. At this moment, they believe their plan is finally safe. The Guardian has been born to protect them, and their suffering is over. Meanwhile, in a darkened room, Kallian stands before a projector giving a formal presentation about Burkin's origins. He explains that their civilization has specialized in controlling the flow of cosmic energy since ancient times. They have mastered the ability to manipulate individual energy, either to heal injuries or transfer power to others. A high-ranking leader sits alone in the room, listening from behind a grand table, the only piece of furniture in the space. Kallian continues, revealing a critical piece of information. Lord Burkin currently holds the combined energy of 300,000 people. However, such an overwhelming amount of energy is dangerous even for him. To prevent his body from breaking under the pressure, a special device is used to seal the power away. Releasing the seal isn't simple. It requires the use of the Trumpet of Liberation. Only then will Burkin awaken as a true guardian capable of wielding his full strength. Days pass, and Burkin finds himself in the middle of a battle against a massive green monster covered in multiple eyes. The creature towers over him, its grotesque form radiating danger. Kallian, standing nearby, watches in disbelief. His voice rises in concern as he repeatedly calls out to Burkin, wondering if he has somehow fallen asleep in the middle of the fight. Burkin's eyes snap open just in time to see the monster lunging at him. The attack never lands. Moving at impossible speed, Burkin counters instantly, slashing through the creature with ease. The force of the strike sends the monster flying backward. It crashes into the ground, motionless, defeated in an instant. Kallian steps forward, clearly thrilled. He reminds Burkin that this is the power of the Guardian, a warrior infused with the strength of 300,000 people. He seems to expect some kind of proud response, but Burkin remains silent. Instead, something strange happens. Though he doesn't speak, Kallian hears something, telepathic words reaching his mind. Confusion flickers across Kallian's face. Burkin is trying to say something unsettling. His body doesn't move the way he wants it to. Kallian brushes it off with a smug response. Controlling such overwhelming power right away is impossible. That's why he's there, to assist with the trumpet. There's nothing to worry about. Burkin's mind and personality are still intact, and the discomfort will pass eventually. He simply needs to get used to it. From now on, the Guardian will fight under his guidance. Before the conversation can continue, chaos erupts. More monsters invade the city, attacking the people of Burkin. Panic spreads as civilians rush in every direction, desperate to escape. A frightened citizen suddenly spots a figure descending from the sky. The Guardian has arrived. Burkin drops from above, landing directly onto a dinosaur-like monster. Without hesitation, he eliminates it instantly. The crowd explodes in cheers. Their voices merge into one overwhelming chant praising their hero. Burkin lifts into the air, gripping the severed head of the fallen beast as he soars above the city. The people continue their deafening cheers, shouting his name over and over. He doesn't stay to bask in the celebration. His figure vanishes into the sky. Later, inside the fortress of the Transferry Planet's Central Defense Force, a high-ranking official summons Burkin and Callian, delivering strict new orders. Callian reacts immediately, his frustration spilling over. He can't believe what he's hearing. They are expected to fight without causing any damage to the city at all. That is impossible. The official, completely unfazed by his complaints, explains the reasoning. Every time the Guardian is deployed, the destruction to civilian areas is enormous. Since Burkin's energy comes directly from the citizens, minimizing the damage should be their responsibility. Burkin, looking caught off guard, hesitates before giving a half-hearted response. He agrees to be more careful next time. Callian turns to him in disbelief and jabs him in the ribs. His voice lowers, filled with irritation. Agreeing to nonsense like this makes no sense. In another battle, Callian stands at the edge of the fight, shouting commands into the golden trumpet. His voice is sharp, trying to snap Burkin out of whatever hesitation is holding him back. Burkin follows the order exactly, shifting his focus to the monster in front of him. Callian wastes no time. He barks another command, telling Burkin to get rid of the creature as quickly as possible. Burkin's mind lingers on the words of the official. The Guardian's energy comes from the very people he is supposed to protect. Keeping them safe is supposed to be a priority. Callian grows impatient. His frustration builds as he yells again, commanding Burkin hurry up and launch the monster away. Burkin grips the creature tightly but hesitates. Callian raises his voice even louder through the trumpet, calling him an idiot for standing there like a statue. Finally, Burkin obeys. With a powerful throw, he hurls the monster far away. Before he can recover, he follows up with a devastating beam attack, completely obliterating it. Later, Callian stands before the official, desperation in his eyes. He pleads for one last chance, just one more opportunity to prove himself in battle. The official refuses without hesitation. He reminds Callian that he has already reached his limit. Forcing more energy into the Guardian at this point would be reckless. Callian refuses to back down. He argues that recklessness doesn't matter. The monster they just fought is irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. If they advance to the next stage of civilization, everything will change. The battles will be different. They will finally have a fresh start. The official pauses, considering the request. After a brief moment of silence, he finally gives in. If Callian insists this much, then so be it. Back in the present, Jinwol finally moves, turning his face toward Burkin, who is still desperately pleading. Burkin insists that everything must end. His energy-infused hand moves closer, the glow intensifying. Jinwol pushes himself up, his expression filled with irritation. Without a moment of hesitation, he calls Burkin an idiot and smashes his fist straight into his face. Burkin barely has time to react before another attack comes. Jinwol, clearly not in the mood for any more nonsense, delivers a brutal kick, sending him flying across the arena. Instead of following up, Jinwol points toward the crowd, telling Burkin to direct his words over there instead. If he wants to talk about endings, he should say it to those people, not him. His attention shifts to Callian, who still stands there with his usual scowl, trying way too hard to act like he's in control. With a smirk, Jinwol, now fully healed, takes a step forward. He glances at Callian again, amused. The so-called commander of the Guardian, his weapon seems to have quite a bit to say for itself. From the stands of Team Earth, Lena's excitement explodes. She practically jumps out of her seat, shouting at Jinwol with all the energy of someone who just won the lottery. She always believed in him, of course she did. Meanwhile, Callian seethes with frustration. His glare fixes on Burkin, his voice dripping with disbelief. If Burkin had just stayed down, their victory would have been certain. The Guardian has ruined everything. Burkin, still lying on the ground, barely reacts. His voice is quiet, but his words carry weight. He doesn't want to continue in this tournament anymore. Callian freezes. His face twists in complete disbelief before his anger boils over. He yells at Burkin, demanding that he stop acting like a child. A Guardian doesn't get to throw tantrums. Does Burkin even realize how much effort and resources went into creating him? He wasn't made to think, to hesitate. He was made to fight. He has a duty, and that duty is to get up and finish this battle for their future. The crowd of Burkin supporters, however, doesn't take kindly to this outburst. Their frustration turns to rage as they shout back at Callian. They refuse to stand by while he speaks that way to their Guardian. Callian turns to them, his patience gone. His voice is sharp, laced with irritation as he tells them to stay out of things they don't understand. Burkin, still on the ground, makes his decision. He isn't needed anymore. Not for their future. Kellyan stares at him, his anger giving way to confusion. He doesn't understand what Burkin is trying to say. Then, without warning, a memory flashes before him. In the past, Kellyan stands in a cold, sterile room with the official. Behind them, Burkin floats inside the glass chamber, still recovering from his injuries. Kellyan is furious, demanding answers. The official just told him to stop supplying energy to Burkin. That makes no sense. Even increasing the energy barely helps him heal. Cutting it off would be madness. The official, completely unbothered by Kellyan's reaction, confirms it. He already knows the consequences. That's exactly why it's time to proceed with the disposal process. Kellyan's voice wavers as he repeats the word, almost as if he misheard the word disposal. The official remains calm, as if discussing routine paperwork instead of a living being. He reminds Kellyan that the monster X001, which they defeated earlier, was the last of its kind. Publicly, it was classified as a mutant creature, but they both know the truth. Those creatures weren't just monsters. They were failed Guardian Project experiments from the past. With the final one gone, there is no longer any real threat to their civilization. Kellyan's stomach twists. He already knows where this is going. If they dispose of the Guardian now, the GSP tournament, their civilization's only chance at advancement will be out of their reach. Before he can argue, the official cuts him off. The decision has already been made. The elders have chosen to withdraw from the GSP tournament, regardless of what consequences follow. Even if it means accepting the humiliation of remaining a lower-ranked civilization, this is the best path forward for them. Kellyan clenches his fists, his frustration barely contained. The official keeps saying us, but what about Burkin? Didn't he fight for them? Doesn't that make him part of their civilization? The official barely blinks at the question. His tone stays cold, dismissive. Burkin is not a person. He is not one of them. He is a weapon. Nothing more, nothing less. To keep that weapon stable, Kellyan's own life force is constantly drained, and they both know there is a limit to how much he can give. Kellyan stares at him, disbelief and anger mixing together. His voice lowers, filled with quiet desperation. Just one more chance. One more chance to fight. Back in the present, Burkin speaks with finality. His role was to protect the planet from monsters. That role has now ended. Kellyan's entire body tenses as he processes those words. His teeth clench, his fists tighten, and frustration boils inside him. He repeats the words back, unable to believe what he just heard. His mind drags him back to the past, to the times they walked side by side, fighting together. The thought of it ending like this is unbearable. His anger erupts. His voice shakes as he yells at Burkin, rejecting the weak, pitiful excuse he just gave. If anyone deserves peace, it's not the people in the stands, it's him. The fight isn't over. There is still a chance. If they advance to the finals and their civilization rises in rank, Burkin's incomplete body, his altered, twisted form, can all be restored. Everything can be fixed. He just needs to get out. The words echo. Burkin repeats them under his breath, his mind processing them. Then, slowly, he rises to his feet. Something changes. Kellyan, still holding the massive golden trumpet, raises it high and shouts into it with all his strength. This time, he doesn't demand Burkin fight for others. He demands he fight for himself. A surge of power bursts from Burkin's body. His muscles tense, his form stiffens, and a vibrant blue aura radiates from him, growing stronger by the second. Across the battlefield, Jinwol watches with newfound excitement. His eyes light up as he takes in the change. Now, this is what makes a fight worth it. Burkin's entire body grows, shifting into a monstrous form. His once contained energy now explodes outward, covering the arena in sheer power. Jinwol smirks, completely satisfied. This version of Burkin is incomparable to the dull puppet that was fighting for others just moments ago. Now he actually looks like someone worth beating. Kellyan gives Burkin the signal. This is now an all-out battle. No more holding back. Burkin responds immediately. His massive fist slams into the arena floor with such force that the ground beneath shatters like glass. Leviathan's voice booms across the stadium, barely able to contain the excitement. The sheer power of Burkin is beyond imagination. In this form, he is energy itself. A single direct hit would be enough to end the match instantly. But then another twist. Jinwol dodges at the last possible moment, his speed unbelievable. This time, however, he doesn't follow up with an attack. The crowd watches in confusion. Leviathan quickly analyzes the situation. Burkin's current form might be the reason for this hesitation. If physical attacks are now useless, what can Jinwol do? Jinwol looks down his own hand. A faint bruise marks his skin, a rare sign of damage. He mutters something under his breath, but then his expression changes. The irritation fades, replaced by a sharp grin. Without a second thought, both of his hands begin radiating pure energy. Leviathan immediately catches on. Jinwol is channeling energy into both hands, preparing for an attack. He seems to be using an energy shield, likely to prevent his body from taking further damage. Burkin doesn't wait. He launches another attack, relentless as ever. But it's no use. Jinwol moves too fast, his speed almost unreal. His movements blur, making it nearly impossible to track him. Leviathan keeps up his commentary, pointing out the obvious. Burkin is trying everything to close the distance, but it simply isn't enough. Kallian, now desperate, yells for Burkin to keep attacking, to not stop for even a second. But it's hopeless. No matter how hard Burkin tries, Jinwol remains untouchable. His attacks swing through empty space, missing every single time. It isn't even a fight anymore. It's target practice without a target. Kallian grits his teeth, frustration turning into desperation. They just need one hit. One clean strike, and it's over. In the stands, a group of blue-skinned aliens notices something unusual. One of them points at Jinwol, confused. Something isn't right. His movement, it's suddenly different. Kallian's eyes widen as he processes the same thing. Then realization dawns and his lips curl into a grin. There was never a need to rush this fight. The truth becomes painfully clear. Jinwol isn't just dodging, he's barely surviving. Both of his hands are gone. The attempt to counter Burkin's attacks cost him more than he expected. His body struggles to stay in one piece. Kallian lets out a laugh, the kind only a sore winner would make. He taunts Jinwol, rubbing the reality of the situation. Burkin is no longer just a fighter. His body has turned into a living furnace, overflowing with the energy of countless people. No flimsy barrier can withstand that kind of force. Burkin lunges again. Jinwol is in midair, completely vulnerable. Kallian's excitement skyrockets. This is it. He can't dodge anymore. He shouts for Burkin to finish him, to end it now. But then something shifts. Still airborne, Jinwol suddenly smirks. His voice cuts through the tension, throwing Kallian's own words right back at him. The real fool isn't him, it's Kallian. Dodging was never part of the plan. In the next moment, Jinwol kicks off the air itself, propelling his body straight at Burkin like a missile. No hesitation. No fear. He closes the distance in an instant, heading directly for the so-called Guardian. The alien news reporter watches the scene unfold, shaking his head. He expected more. For Jinwol to throw his life away at the very end, it's disappointing. He had high hopes, but in the end, it's just another waste of potential. Then everything changes. A massive explosion erupts from the battlefield, unlike anything seen before. The sheer force of it isn't just contained to the arena. It spreads outward, its shockwaves traveling far beyond the planet. The impact is so immense that it is felt on other planets. Meanwhile, in a distant, high-ranking assembly of powerful alien leaders, one figure remains calm, observing the event unfold. Millennia, the representative of the incipient civilization, a rank 1 powerhouse, takes notice. He acknowledges the surge of energy, recognizing it as something unusual, something worth paying attention to. For this level of power to be unleashed in the preliminaries is unheard of. His mind quickly calculates the source, tracing it back. His gaze sharpens as he pinpoints the location. If this energy is coming from that direction, then it must be Leviathan's district. After a brief moment of thought, he finally stands up, a rare decision. It's been a long time since he last visited his brother. The arena lies in complete ruin. The once grand battlefield is now nothing more than shattered ground and swirling dust. Nothing remains untouched by the blast. Marcel stares at the devastation, barely able to believe what just happened. The sheer force behind that attack, it was beyond comprehension. If that had landed directly, not even that guy would have survived. Leviathan, ever the professional, quickly addresses the audience. With the chaos unfolding, he reminds the spectators to remain calm. To prevent sudden energy explosions from reaching them, the arena's energy barrier is being reinforced in real time. The match is still ongoing, and they are free to continue enjoying the spectacle. But even Leviathan has to admit, this is impressive. The energy barrier, built to withstand Tier 4 civilization-level attacks, is actively reacting to the fight. For a match between so-called lower civilizations, they are putting on a surprisingly decent show. Meanwhile, the people of Burkin erupt into cheers. Their voices boom through the ruined arena, shouting Burkin's name over and over. To them, this outcome was expected. Of course, their guardian would stand victorious. Kallian watches everything unfold, breathless. Then laughter spills from him, uncontrolled. His voice shakes between disbelief and overwhelming joy. Burkin really is incredible. Burkin, still standing amidst the wreckage, continues to radiate an overwhelming aura. His body glows, his energy surging stronger than ever. Kallian, still caught up in the moment, calls it, the fight is over. This is their victory. But then something unexpected happens. Burkin turns to face Kallian, his expression unreadable. His voice comes out weak, almost apologetic. Then everything falls apart. His face cracks. Then the rest of his body shatters. Piece by piece, Burkin's form disintegrates, breaking apart like glass. His once mighty aura vanishes in an instant. What's left of him collapses, hitting the ground hard. The guardian of Burkin lies unconscious, his once unshakable body now motionless. On the other hand, Jinwol also lies on the ground, both arms missing, yet a smirk stretches across his face. His breath is ragged, but the amusement in his eyes remains. Burkin, for all of his overwhelming strength, hesitated until the very end. What a fool! His thoughts wander for a moment, piecing everything together. In the end, Burkin's true intention was never to kill. That moment of hesitation, that final moment, had been proof of it. The attack had thrown off his sky step, but in the grand scheme of things, it didn't really matter. His gaze shifts to Burkin's unconscious, broken form, and his voice comes out with a finality that seals the moment. Their debt is settled. The death Burkin had wished for, he granted it. Then the voice of Leviathan thunders across the battlefield, cutting through the silence. The match is over. The winner has been decided. The representative of Earth, Jinwol, stands victorious. Jinwol slowly pushes himself up, rising to his feet despite his battered state. From the stands, Lena's voice explodes with excitement. She knew it. She knew he could do it. Mark, meanwhile, looks like he's trying to process the impossible. His hands grip his head as he mutters to himself. Somehow, against all odds, Jinwol actually won against that monster. Marcel, standing nearby, soaks in the moment. His gaze sweeps over the stunned alien spectators before him. This was the strength of Earth. This was the real representative of Earth, Jinwol. Kallian rushes into the arena, his voice breaking as he calls out for Burkin. His feet pound against the shattered ground, but it's too late. Burkin is no more. Kallian falls to his knees beside what remains of the Guardian, and his grief quickly twists into rage. His head snaps toward Jinwol, fury burning in his eyes. His voice cracks as he demands an answer, accusing him of using some kind of cowardly trick. Burkin should have been untouchable. Jinwol's attacks shouldn't have been able to damage him at all. Jinwol barely reacts. His expression remains calm, almost bored, as he throws the accusation back at Kallian. A cowardly trick. If Kallian is referring to him sharing his chi with Burkin, then sure, call it that. Kallian freezes, his mind struggling to catch up, sharing chi. His voice shakes as he demands clarification. Then the realization creeps in, the pieces clicking into place. The attacks just now. It couldn't be. Jinwol, ever the patient teacher for idiots, explains. He wasn't attacking Burkin in the traditional sense. Instead, he had been injecting his own chi into Burkin's cosmo force during the fight. Burkin had already gone far beyond his limit. His body was running on borrowed time. Jinwol simply helped that process along by inserting just a little more chi into him. Kallian's breath catches. If Burkin hadn't pushed himself so recklessly, if he hadn't burned through everything so fast. The regret is instant, but it's too late. Before he can fully process the weight of it all, angry voices rise from the stands. One of the spectators shouts at Kallian, mocking him for standing there like a clueless fool. If Burkin is down, then Kallian should get in the fight instead of wasting time crying. Another voice cuts in, even more furious. They gave up everything, poured all their energy into this so-called strategy, and for what? Losing in the second round of the preliminaries against a mere earthling. The frustration boils over. Had they not wasted all their energy on that outdated relic Kallian insisted on calling a guardian, maybe, just maybe, things would have been different. Kallian snaps, his grief explodes into raw anger as he shouts back at the crowd. Burkin wasn't just a fighter. He was a true hero who never asked for anything in return. He sacrificed everything to protect them, yet now they have the audacity to turn on him. Did they really think they could just sit back and endure whatever came next? A complacent civilization would never find true peace. One day, beings far more ruthless than the monsters they had fought would set their sights on their planet. And when that day came, who would protect them then? His face twists, his expression distorting with each word, but he doesn't stop. His voice rises as he calls out their delusions, reminding them that the so-called alliance they trust would never protect them the way Burkin did. And then, mid-sentence, his head explodes. Just like that, the shouting ends. Silence grips the arena. It wasn't random. It wasn't an accident. Leviathan hovers above, calm and unbothered, the faintest trace of energy flickering from his fingertips. He simply states that Kallian should not have insulted the gods. Then his attention shifts. He turns to Jinwol, uninterested in any further distractions. The match is over. The Earthling is in the way. He should leave. Jinwol doesn't move. His eyes lock onto Leviathan, his gaze sharp, unreadable. There's something in his expression, something that suggests he isn't about to let this slide. From the stands, Mark watches, his voice uneasy as he wonders why Jinwol is reacting like that. Lena, sensing the tension, calls out, trying to stop him before things escalate. But before anything happens, another presence enters the arena. Millennia arrives, his eyes scanning the battlefield. He wonders if he's too late. Leviathan's expression darkens instantly. His mood shifts from arrogance to irritation. He does not like this and wonders why is that bastard is here. The moment Millennia steps forward, everyone bows. The energy in the arena shifts entirely, the air growing heavy under his presence. This wasn't just a visit. This was an unexpected welcome from a ruler among warriors. A fighter with immense energy had fallen, and now someone far beyond comprehension had arrived. Lena, still overwhelmed, tries to lift her head, curiosity getting the better of her. Before she can, Mark reacts quickly, pressing her head down, forcing her to kneel with the others. This wasn't the time to test limits. Jinwol feels it too. The pressure Millennia releases isn't just strong, it's suffocating. Its body locks up for a brief second, frozen under the sheer weight of the aura radiating from this being. Then Millennia speaks, his voice carrying the authority of someone who never needs to repeat himself. His question is simple, but it shatters the moment. He asks, does that make Jinwol the winner of this match? Jinwol slowly lifts his head. His expression is unreadable at first, his body still adjusting to the overwhelming force pressing down on him. Then the corner of his mouth pulls into a smirk. This is it. For the first time, he is standing before the true peak of this world. The moment Millennia arrives, everyone bows, unable to resist the weight of his presence. It presses down on them like an invisible force, suffocating and undeniable. Without speaking, he descends onto the arena, making his way toward Jinwol. His aura is unlike anything else. It doesn't just radiate power, it twists the very fabric of reality. Every step he takes reshapes what strength even means, as if the universe itself acknowledges him as something beyond comprehension. Jinwol keeps his eyes on him, his expression impossible to read. His mind struggles to fully process what stands before him. This isn't just another warrior, another ruler, another so-called champion. This is the peak of existence itself. Not far away, Leviathan watches, his frustration barely contained. His jaw tightens, his fingers twitch, and irritation builds with every second. He mutters a curse under his breath, despising every moment of this. To him, Millennia isn't just an inconvenience, he is unbearable. He wonders, why does he have to show up now? Of all times, why this exact moment? The sight of that smug face makes his thoughts turn sharp with resentment. That insufferable bastard. Why does he always have to be here? His glare darkens as he watches everything unfold, his fists clenching tighter. Now he has no choice but to stand there, fuming, forced to witness this nonsense all over again. The most infuriating part is that Millennia is probably enjoying every second of this. And not just by accident. He is doing it on purpose. Leviathan refuses to believe that anyone genuinely worships him. This reaction from the people, this ridiculous display of forced reverence, is nothing more than a lingering imprint burned into civilizations long ago, a relic left behind from a war that shattered the universe itself. Nearly 100 million years ago, the universe faced its greatest disaster. A devastating shortage of resources that sent entire civilizations crumbling. Desperation grew, and that desperation sparked the flames of war. The Great Galactic War began. For 3,000 years, chaos spread like wildfire, consuming everything in its path. Entire civilizations, once thriving, were erased. More than half of all known species vanished, their names lost to time. The universe inched closer and closer to complete collapse, drowning in its own destruction. And then in just 10 days it all ended. One being changed everything. NCP and Millennia Enreal. He did not just intervene, he crushed the war under his will, bringing an end to the slaughter that had raged for millennia. With nothing but his presence, entire civilizations surrendered, the fighting that had lasted thousands of years wiped away in mere days. From that moment on, civilizations did not just fear him, they treated him like something beyond mortal comprehension. Him and the select few who stood beside him. This event did not just reshape the universe, it laid the foundation for something far greater. It was the birth of the Galactic Alliance. Leviathan grits his teeth, his frustration reaching a boiling point. If he had been around during the Great Galactic War, this entire spectacle would have been about him. The reverence, the bowing, the power. It should have belonged to him, not Millennia. His thoughts are cut short when a robotic assistant approaches, delivering its usual monotone report. He says that thanks to the sudden appearance of Millennia, the event has once again skyrocketed to the #1 spot in real-time ratings. His expression darkens. Because of Millennia, the very suggestion makes his blood boil. He refuses to accept it. The high ratings have nothing to do with that insufferable presence. The credit belongs to him alone, his flawless hosting, his unmatched charisma. If anything, Millennia is ruining the experience. His patience snaps. He turns toward Millennia, demanding he leave immediately. Entering the arena without permission is a direct violation of the rules. Millennia doesn't seem the least bit bothered. Instead, he tilts his head slightly, clear amusement in his expression. Leviathan lecturing someone about rules? Now that's unexpected. Still, Millennia reassures him that he has no plans to stay. He simply wants to exchange a few words with the one who managed to defeat the warrior of immense energy. Leviathan has no interest in entertaining the request. His patience is gone. He leaps into the arena, his anger barely contained, demanding that Millennia stop wasting time and leave at once. But his frustration only grows stronger. Every second Millennia remains in his sight is an insult. Millennia, completely unfazed, speaks in the same calm tone. Leviathan is mistaken. There are no grand schemes here, just a brief conversation. Leviathan doesn't let him finish. His voice cuts through the arena, commanding respect. If Millennia is ignoring the rules, then he is ignoring Leviathan himself. Without a second thought, Leviathan grabs Millennia by the head. His grip tightens, his aura flares with rage. Millennia laughs. His tone remains relaxed even as Leviathan tightens his hold. He admits he has heard some things about his so-called brother. Rumors, whispers, confirmations that Leviathan has been the real problem all along. It seems Leviathan is the one who has been disregarding the rules, making selfish decisions, and acting without permission. And because of that, his entire sector is suffering during the tournament. Leviathan yells, his voice booming through the arena. His anger flares as he declares that his word is the ultimate law in this place. He refuses to tolerate anyone questioning him. Millennia, unfazed, points out that Leviathan hasn't changed at all, still just as reckless as ever. Leviathan refuses to be looked down on. His fury builds, and suddenly, a dark aura surrounds him. The air turns heavy as a black hole forms above the arena, sucking in everything around it. The crowd watches in shock, struggling to comprehend what's happening. Some assume it is pure energy, but one of them realizes the truth. This is not just energy, it behaves like an actual black hole. Destruction spreads quickly. Objects, structures, and even people get pulled toward the void. Panic erupts as the audience desperately tries to escape. One man, feeling his body losing control, stammers in terror as he gets dragged toward the abyss. Millennia, still as sarcastic as ever, comments on Leviathan's warm welcome. The power before them is something beyond that of a god. The ability to break down and reshape matter at will. Anything living or non-living that touches the swirling sphere instantly dissolves into liquid. Leviathan turns his fury toward Millennia, vowing to teach him what happens when someone dares to break his rules. Millennia challenges him, questioning if he even cares that his so-called precious audience is about to be completely erased. Leviathan snaps, demanding silence. He refuses to take the blame and insists that Millennia is the one who started this mess in the first place. Millennia makes his decision and prepares to act. There is no other choice left. Through telepathic command, he reaches out to the judges of Sector 3, ordering them to protect all civilizations inside the arena from this moment onward. The response is immediate. Every judge acknowledges the command, declaring their duty to follow the will of the Supreme God. Judge Virtus, Judge Dominiel, and Judge Etherian move without hesitation, working together to rescue the people caught in the chaos. Millennia turns his attention to the last remaining presence, his clumsy little brother still standing amidst the destruction. Then something catches his eye. Jinwol remains unaffected by the barrier, a detail that immediately raises suspicion. A mere human should not be able to withstand Leviathan's gravity. Yet not only does he endure it, but he also possesses enhanced regeneration. Defeating a warrior with immense energy could not have been pure luck. Millennia acknowledges the struggle of Jinwol, urging him to hold on a little longer. Leviathan's ability to reconstruct was never meant to function as an absorption technique, meaning there may still be a way to counter it. He then turns his attention back to Leviathan, questioning if he is satisfied yet. But Leviathan is far from done. His rage continues to burn, and with all four of his hands, he prepares to strike. He reminds Millennia of an important fact. He was the one who personally created his restraints. In his current state, Millennia has no chance of stopping him. Leviathan makes his declaration with absolute confidence. This will be the day he finally exposes Millennia's true limitations to the entire universe. Millennia, however, remains calm. He points out the small but crucial detail that his overexcited brother seems to have forgotten. Inside the arena, he is allowed to release at least one of his restraints. Millennia removes one of the restraints on his arm, signaling that it is time to end this. He raises his fingers, and in an instant, a beam of energy cuts through the black hole above, slicing apart. Leviathan immediately realizes he is in deep trouble. Reality hits him like a brick, and he snaps back to his senses. Accepting defeat, he admits his mistake and offers an apology for the chaos he caused. Millennia leaves the rest of the matches in the hands of Livian, making it clear that his part in this is over. Then turning to Jinwol, he acknowledges his strength once again, praising him for his victory. He hints that their conversation is not over yet and instructs Jinwol to ensure he reaches the main arena on time. Mark and Lena watch everything unfold, completely stunned. None of this seems real to them. Jinwol exits the arena looking lost in thought. Before he can process everything, Lena rushes toward him, calling his name. She reaches out before she can ask if he is okay. He takes her hand and interrupts with a question of his own. His focus is elsewhere. He wants to know about the man who was just there. Was he also a contestant in the tournament? Lena hesitates for a moment before realizing he is talking about Millennia. She confirms that Millennia is the incipient representative, and not just any participant, but the final opponent in the tournament. Jinwol reflects on what just happened. Even if it was only for a moment, he felt something when Millennia used his power. It was familiar, an eerie, inexplicable sense of déjà vu. Lena explains that since the tournament began, no one has ever managed to defeat Millennia. Jinwol instinctively understands that if he wants to find the truth behind this strange feeling, there is only one way forward. If there is something waiting to be uncovered, he has no other choice. He must climb to the very top of this tournament. And that was it from today's video. I hope that you liked today's video, and if you did, hit that like button as today's like goal is 1,500 likes. Comment next part down below to see what happens next. Also, consider subscribing with the notification bell on to get notified as soon as a new video drops onto the channel. You can also join the channel to support me financially and watch videos before public release. I'll meet you in the next video. Until then, thanks for watching.